Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our community prayer from Selectman Townsend.
Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen.
Now we reach citizens' participation. It's the moment at the start of the meeting when we ask residents that would like to address the board to please approach the bench. We ask each to limit their conversation for 3 minutes to give other people the opportunity to speak. Was there anybody that wanted to speak tonight? All right, there being nobody.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry?
Did you read that broadcast Area 58?
I did not. I should mention that this meeting is being cablecast by Area 58, Community Access Media, Channel 15. We have openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. Can we start the hearing prior to 7:10? Given that it is not 7:10? All right, then we'll jump to the fence viewer appointment. Donna Ferrand. This was tabled from our prior meeting as a result of a 2-2 vote. So give us your name and address, please.
Donna Marie Ferrand, 278 South Meadow Village in Carver.
All right, and I think we discussed, I don't know, Alan, did you have any questions? We had questions back and forth when...
Oh, I know, I watched.
Oh, okay.
I came back from my vacation, and I was rather chagrined to find out that this was still an unresolved issue. So I watched the previous board meeting, not once, not twice, but 3 times. So I've really upped the number of YouTube watches on it. First off, Donna, I'm sorry you had to come back here for this. In my 6 years, I know I haven't served as long as Ron or Sarah, but it's the first time I can remember an applicant, a sole applicant for a position to one of the committees that we appoint, not to be unanimously appointed. I was kind of surprised by that, but here we are. Mm-hmm. I did listen, like I said, I watched it 3 times, listened to Ms. Hewen's concerns, and I could see where she was coming from on that. But to me, the one I really couldn't grasp was we should give more time for maybe somebody more qualified. This is a position that's been open for ages, and the thing I got was we were changing the rules in midstream. We'd already appointed Mr. Belbin with the way things have always been done, and yet here was you coming before the board, and all of a sudden things were changing, and I just find that very unfair. I understand Bob's point that we have no bylaw for this. I don't know if it needs a bylaw, but I would think probably a prudent thing would be to be going forward after this application, the next time we want somebody, is to perhaps go to the planning department and say, could you draw up some guidelines for fence viewing? That way they've got something they can follow, because they're really not that much except for the regulations with the planning board on fences themselves. The vote came down, like I say, Ms. Rand, put in her application under an understanding the way we had always done things, and all of a sudden that was no longer good enough. And I have a problem with that. Going forward for next applications, we make it clear that we're going to look for guidance from planning, for instructions, that's fine. So I can understand Sarah's vote. I'm still a little confused about Mr. Belbin's decision. To me, just because we don't have bylaws, we didn't have bylaws when we appointed him to the position, and we didn't stop appointing him for that. I have to ask, Ms. Brand, did anybody after the meeting reach out to explain their vote to you?
Well, if you look on Facebook, you'll see that Mr. Belbin had a conversation with somebody on Facebook, and he did reach out to me immediately after the appointment that I had here that night in the selectmen's meeting. And when he called me, I assumed he was calling me as a selectman in reference
Excuse
to
me,
why he didn't
Is
vote.
this germane to
Yes.
the vote
Yes.
tonight?
I think it's something, we're very big on the public knowing things and a complete openness and transparency. And I think this is important.
I have no problem with it.
Okay.
So he called me and he asked me, was I in a meeting the other day? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking
But
about.
could we, this specifically, what was it that he gave you as a reason why he did not vote in favor of you?
That conversation, he said that he didn't vote for me, and he wanted me to know why, was because of my conduct at a previous meeting that evening that occurred with the Council on Aging.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have a bit of a problem with that, in that, there's a push to go ahead and have all the appointments done by the by the Select Board. When the town administrator bylaw was first created, it was
I
written
think
that-
we're getting a little astray. Right now, we're talking about appointing.
All right, in that case,
Ms.
Mr.
Brand.
Chairman, I know Ms. Brand wrote you a letter, and I would like that letter added to the official minutes of this meeting. We've had other letters and people voicing complaints about other people on the board and in the administration that have been added, and I feel that it's only right that her letter be added.
If that is legal and proper, I will see that it is done.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Other than that, I have no questions or other comments at this time. I'd be more than happy to go ahead and go with the vote.
Well, for the purpose of discussion, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we nominate Donna Ferrand.
I'll
Is there a
second.
All right, further discussion.
All right. Yes, I did. I most certainly did reach out to Donna to let her know the reason why I didn't appoint her. And the reason was her conduct at the Council on Aging meeting, where she, I don't think she was, I got to be careful on what I say here.
We're getting
but-
astray from, we're trying to appoint,
Okay.
or to appoint or not appoint.
So excuse me, but if you're the selectman and you're judging me by my behavior at a previous meeting,
Ma'am, I understand
I don't think
your
it should be
frustration,
going
but
down this route.
A member of the board of, the select board can vote against somebody for any reason, just because they don't like their appearance, because they're wearing red instead of orange. The reason they didn't vote for you is their own personal, and so that, again, I understand your frustration, but what we're doing here tonight is determining your appointment to the board. You've let us know that you had a conversation with Mr. Belbin. Mr. Belbin's confirmed that the conversation took place and explained why he voted the way he did. But again, there's nothing,
And Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I just want to make it clear that I didn't release any of that information prior to, because I didn't want to say anything bad about Ms. Ferrand at the time of it, okay? Being brought up now, all right, I just saw two instances, one going toward a resident and another one going to a chairman. Those two really got me to think, to say, well, maybe I need to vote a certain way, and that's why I did. And I brought it up to her, and I explained to her the reason why I did, what I did. I think that's the only good thing for me to do to somebody, because.
What were you saying, one went to one thing and one went to the chairman?
It was her.
The comments that were
she
made
during.
at that COA meeting.
Oh, okay, all right.
One went to a resident, one went to the
Okay.
chairman, all
I
right?
also
But-
watched that meeting.
All right,
Okay.
again, we're
And I
getting
found no problem
astray.
with it.
Let's try to stay on
Okay?
topic here.
But to stay on topic here is that I think the vote was 2 for and 2 against, and thus it wasn't tabled to the next meeting. I think that's the vote that was done, was 2 people voted in favor, 2 voted against, so therefore it couldn't be approved.
And during
All
the,
right.
during the meeting, at the conclusion of the vote, the chairman went ahead and stated, we will bring this back up at our next scheduled board meeting to go ahead and resolve the issue.
Okay, well, I don't remember that, but that's
Well,
fine, that's
believe me, I
fine.
watched it 3 times.
No problem, that's fine, all right. But I want to make it clear that without bylaws for fences, all right, we don't have any in Carver. We have none, with nothing to turn around and say, okay, fine, here we go. Go
All right,
ahead.
well, again, we're
Have
not-
whoever else out there, but we need bylaws to turn around and give us the information.
And again,
not
my
go by
position at
state.
the last meeting was, if we were going to apply standards, then we should open up the whole thing, remove you from the appointment, and apply the standards to everybody, not just to the second person coming on board.
And
So,
Mr. Chairman, I
And Mr.
agreed with
Chair,
that
if I
in the
may.
future, that we
I-
need to go to the planning department, since they're the
Well-
ones that had the, and I agree with Bob. We need to have at least some rules, if not a bylaw on it. But that does not affect Ms. Ferrand as things
Well,
stand now. That's
we-
something.
again,
Can I
have to
just
have
say
this-
something here, like 1 second? And my thought process in this whole thing is that Mr. Belbin had asked people to come and sit on committees and volunteer in this community, and that's what I did. And when he called me and interrogated me about being
All right,
at a
again-
about me being in a meeting next door, and I was not in that
All right,
meeting.
I-
That was him interrogating me, and I felt he did not vote for me because he thought I was in a
Mrs.
meeting.
Ferrand, I understand.
And he did
All right, We're
admit
bringing this back on point, please.
to this.
All right, we're bringing this back on point. Sarah, last comment.
Thank you, yes. I think that, I'm just going to reiterate really quickly what I said last time. This is a really important appointment. When we appointed Bob, I honestly didn't really know what fence viewer was. Since then, I've looked it up. It's something that requires a lot of finesse, I think, because it's you're talking about people's property. And so, although I realize that would affect Bob's appointment, I was for your suggestion that we open it up again for both. And, if we get the same 2 people, so be it. But
All right, and the only other thing I'm going
not to
to
be
leave you with,
unfair to Bob.
in some level of frustration, is that I've been on the board coming up on 15 years, and I think I've heard the term fence viewer 3 times in 15 years. So I think to some extent, we may be overstating the significance of the role of the fence viewer and how often we have neighbors going nose to nose over the issue. But putting that all aside,
Well, the problem, I'm sorry if I could just finish it, the problem is that when there's a disagreement about the boundary, you get into litigation. And if we don't have somebody who,
I understand
knows
the need
something
for it,
about
I'm just saying
boundaries.
it doesn't happen that often, but whatever. All right, motion has been made and seconded, we've had discussion. What is the pleasure of the board? Those in favor of appointing Donna Ferrand as fence viewer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
no,
It passes 3-2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's definitely 7:10 and time for a public hearing. Carver EEN Beverages LLC, DBA Carver Spirits at 133 North Main Street. And are these 2 separate applications, or are these the same?
Separate. They're 2 separate.
Those are 2 separate applications. So the first one is for Carver EEN DBA Carver Spirits?
Yes.
Okay, please give us your names and address, and tell us what the issue is, please.
Good evening, my name is Carolyn.
Could you
Pull the
speak into the
microphone over, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Carolyn Conway. I have a business address at 350 West Broadway in Boston, and I'm here representing the applicant, Carver EEM Beverages LLC. To my left is Ishmael Santiago Jr., who is the proposed manager of record. Badi El Khoury is here, as he is going to be the 100% owner. I have for the selectmen's benefit, I did a statement of transaction, so it's in writing, everything that I'm saying to you, so that you'll be able to review it. But basically, what happened here is Noria Energy, which is the applicant for the CV license that you have before you, and their representative is here tonight, has bought the property at 133 North Main Street, that currently operates as a convenience store and as a retail package store. We are very aware of the myriad rules and regulations that the ABCC has, and this Commonwealth of Massachusetts has.
Is this the, New England Farms?
This
currently
is
known as
North
New England
Main
Farms?
Street Market, Inc., but it is, it
It
is.
says New England, it's the one opposite Aubuchon in North Carver?
Yes.
Okay, just.
And so what, because of the restrictions that the ABCC puts on, the purchase and sale agreement was written so that Noria Energy, which is going to come in and operate the food and beverage and the convenience store aspect of the operation, had a nominee provision in the purchase and sale so that they could nominate someone, a different entity to take over the beer and wine operations. And that's the entity that you have before you tonight. It is separate from Noria Energy, but it's going in, and what's happening is that the original square footage for the new, for the North Street Market, Inc. was 4250, and the retail package store operation is now going down to 174 square feet in that retail market. We have given you a floor plan so that you can see exactly where that 174 square feet is within the store. That is going to be delineated on the floor so that it will be a separate floor. The operation will be separate, all the bookkeeping, everything else will be separate. The sale of...
Is that more space? Are you going to be selling more wine and beer?
Oh, no, we're going down from 150 square feet down to 174
So
square
it's
feet.
actually going down.
Right, so if you think of an umbrella kind of closing, and as I said, we've given you the floor plan for where in this particular store the beer and wine operation will be. Mr. Santiago, who has experience in the convenience store industry, is coming in as a supervisor, although I do want to tell the board that we are keeping all of the employees that were there. They were good employees, we have no reason to do that. What we're doing is coming in and basically just tightening up the operation. The hours of operation are staying the same. For everything, it's, as I said, it's just because of the, that we had to spin off the beer and wine applications to somebody else, that we're doing this, and that's why you're seeing the application in the form that it's in. So we've asked for a transfer of ownership of the license, and we've also asked for an alteration of premises because of the reduction that's going down in the square footage. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have, but as I said, I did put in a writing, a statement of transactions. So you basically have what I just told you in writing, and we've made it part of the application.
Other questions from the board?
I have just, you stated that Mr. Santiago has experience in the retail
Yes.
liquor industry. Can I ask what that experience is?
Do you want to give a little rundown of it?
Yeah, I worked 21 years in convenience stores. I worked for Store 24, Tedeschi Food Shop, 7-Eleven, in the capacity of a sales associate all the way up into district manager since the year 2011.
And do those convenience stores have liquor?
Yes.
They do, okay. Thank you.
And I should add that all of Mr. Santiago is tip certified, and we intend on having every employee who works with respect to the alcoholic beverages to make sure that they're tip certified and that's maintained in current condition.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So the 100% ownership of it, this company, does he have other liquor licenses already
He
within
does
his?
not.
No?
No, he's coming in, as he said, he's known to Noria Energy and somebody that they trust and they want to work with. And Mr. Santiago is also somebody who trusted, so they were a natural nominee under these, under the purchase and sale agreement. So
And-
we are relying on Mr. Santiago's supervisory experience to come in, and as I said, just because he's going to be manager on the license. And he's the one who's going to be there supervising the employees.
That was going to be my next question. How often will he be there to oversee what's going on, the operation, because it is alcohol and wine?
Well, at the beginning, when we take over the operation, it's going to be a full-time position. We do hope to, as I said, we want to go in, keep the employees that are already there, and if somebody is deserving of maybe a promotion, if you will, or somebody's going to be there, then we would naturally come back to the selectmen and get a new manager. But right now, this is the person who's going to be in charge of the operation.
And that was my next question I was going to lead up to. Thank you. If Mr. Santiago leaves, is there a secondary plan for someone to take over that license in that area? So we don't have an issue of if something happens, if he decides to go somewhere else or whatever, is there a backup plan?
There would always be a backup plan. Right now, we're going in, we want to see, as I said, because we're pleased with the employees that are there. So we would want to stay open to, as I said, promoting somebody who's there. We don't have a plan now, but we do understand the law, that we cannot have a gap between a manager, that there can't be any time when there is not an active manager on the license.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does the sale or transfer of New England Farms didn't come into this at all? Because I know, I've been told that a new company is actually buying it.
Well, yes.
Because I noticed in your application, it does say North Main Street Market Inc., DBA New England Farms.
Right, well, that is the current holder of the license.
Right.
So, and I think that you'll see, and you'll see that in the next application, because of the ABCC rule that one entity cannot own two licenses in a locality, that's why that there is a different corporation than the next one, which is going to be New England Farms. So it's all, if you will,
Kind of convoluted.
well, yeah, and we're doing our best to make it. We are most intent upon complying with the law and making sure that we're as transparent as possible. We're giving you all of the information that you need to make a decision.
You say you're reducing the footage down to 174?
Yes.
What's going to happen, what's the other space going to be used for?
The other space is going to be used by Noria Energy, which is the applicant for the CV license. And so the convenience store and what was the Subway operation.
Now Amato or whatever.
It is now as Amato, is going to remain. So it's just where there was one business before, there will now be two businesses operating in the same. But the alcohol sales will, as I said, will be delineated within the store, and the sales, everything will be separated from that of the convenience store and the gas station. Nuria is taking over the gas station as well.
Is there any requirement there anywhere where it states that the alcohol cannot be consumed on premise? Because they do have those booths in there that was used for both Honeydew and Subway.
Well, there is no license currently there to consume alcohol on premises, so this particular license would not allow it.
So it'd be up to the employees to ensure that the alcohol, once purchased, leaves the premises.
Oh, yes, and
Yeah.
they also understand that we also have an obligation for the immediate area outside the premises to make sure that somebody's not walking out and popping a can of beer out in the parking lot or while they're filling up for the gas. As I said, we take our obligations very seriously.
All right, thank you very much.
I just have a real quick question. Why is it shrinking so much? Why is this?
Because, as I said, there are two businesses going into one space. So that the alcohol operation is only going to take up that 174 square feet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
That sounds like it's mostly coolers.
It's mostly coolers and a cash register. So that's why we asked for the reduction, so that, we know that the two licenses, the CV license that is going to be issued to Nuria and the alcohol license to Carver EEM Beverages can't overlap. So that's why the application reads the way it does.
Would it be correct to say that the level of experience supervision over the beer and wine sales will be at least the same, if not more than it has been to this point in
Yes,
time?
we actually hope to have it enhanced.
Okay.
But as I said, we went in with the idea that we were going to keep as many employees as we possibly could that are already there, especially given the time of year. And we're pretty satisfied
Okay.
with the people that are there. We're making an effort to keep them.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Do we have to hear from, if anybody from the public wants to say something?
We do.
Public hearing.
Well, we can go ahead and make a motion, and then I can ask for input after that.
Okay. I move we approve the application.
I'll second it.
We move to discussion. Were there any members of the public that wanted to speak to this application? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, do we have to close the public hearing first on this item?
Well, we'll call it closed.
Well, you close the hearing for public discussion. If there's no discussion, then we vote.
Okay.
You can't close the hearing and then
Just
vote.
double checking.
Any other discussion from the board? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous.
Congratulations.
Are you representing the next license
Yes, I
as well?
am. Yes,
And this is for the New England Farms in South Carver?
yes.
And is this a similar situation?
It's almost the exact same, except it's a different LLC. I have Mr. Nick DeMambro, who is going to be the manager of record, who also has an extensive experience in this type of retail operation. And also, we have the owner, who is Mr. Zayed El-Namiri. He is here. He is also, just so you know, Commonwealth EE and AB LLC was just granted. It also purchased one of the New England farms in Middleborough and was granted the license on November 18th. We're expecting ABCC approval any day. So you also have a statement of transaction with respect to this application as well. The facts are very, very similar, that the Commonwealth EE Beverage is a nominee of Nuria Energy. We are we're doing the same thing. The square footage for this is 2,550 square feet. It's being reduced to 148 square feet. We also gave you a floor plan showing in this particular store where the alcoholic beverages sales are going to be. The same demarcation will be out on the floor. Everything will be separate. And pretty much we're hoping to come in. Nuria will be coming in, taking over the gas station, the convenience store, and the food service. And this particular licensee will be limited to just selling the beer and wine. And
Questions
I'm
from-
happy to answer any questions, but
So what would you say the highlights would be, the difference between the two applications?
well, the difference between the two applications is that there really is, there's separate ownership. They're spinning out of the same purchase and sale agreement, but we're very, very aware of the rules of the Commonwealth and the ABCC, and we want to make sure that we're being completely transparent in that we are doing everything in accordance with law. So they are people that Nuria Energy was very happy to have as its nominee, but they are separate.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Same question I had for previously. Can you speak to Mr. DeAmbro's experience in this type of establishment?
Sure. I have almost a decade of experience working for Stewart Shops in New York. There's beer and wine in every single store there. And I was a manager for them for almost a decade. I'm also TIPS certified.
Thank you.
Other questions?
As I said, we've gone really, we've really made it our thing so that we can come here and tell you that we're putting the most qualified people into and we want to make the best operation that we possibly can.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I move we approve.
Second.
All right, anyone from the public that wanted to address this application?
Bless you.
Being none, any further discussion from the board? Being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
one thing, because I know that Nuria is here. There was an application for a CV license for Nuria. Is that, I don't know whether that's part of the agenda or not. I'm not the attorney handling that, but I just don't want to.
Oh, it does mention, and application for common victualer's license for each location.
Right.
Yes, and as I said, I did not do the application, but I know Nuria is here, and I mean, while I'm here and we're explaining everything,
No,
It is on our agenda, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, I missed that, so that I think we can take those into account as well. So if you want to just identify, is it a similar, well, I guess break down what's happening, this applies to both locations?
well, no, it does
No.
not. See, what will happen is that where the space that the alcoholic beverages license does not take up will be covered by the CV license. They cannot overlap. So that all the food preparation, everything will be done by Nuria Energy, and it will be in that part of the premises that is not taken up by the alcoholic. So if we could, the floor plans would remain the same, so that I didn't do the application, but just so you could look at the floor plan, you'll be able to see where the CV license covers and where the alcoholic beverage retail.
You say it's taking the place of the Subway that used to be there,
Yes, that's correct.
occupying essentially the same space?
Essentially the same space, and again, essentially the same food offering. We would like to believe that we're offering a better quality food.
We won't have that debate, but.
Yeah, but again, Nuria has also made the effort to keep the same employees and to have as much continuity while we're upgrading.
That's been very important for us. Again, we want to be a good partner to the community, and there were many great employees, and so we were able to bring them into the fold as well.
Now, you're representing the North Carver location? Or both locations?
For both locations.
Both locations.
Yes.
Is there anything unique between the two locations?
Nope, I don't believe so. Hours of operation are going to remain the same that they were previously. Again, we have currently trained all of the managers in terms of serve-safe training, and we will continue to make sure that all of our employees that are handling food go through the serve-safe program. So we're pretty proud of the fact that we've been proactive about that, and will continue to be.
My understanding is that health and all the other departments are already engaged with the new food operation that's coming in. So we've been proactive about it.
So Amado's is going into both locations?
Yes, that's.
Because currently, I don't believe there's any Subway at the South Carver one.
Then
No.
I may have made a mistake.
Okay,
I
I'm sorry.
apologize. Yeah.
So there'll be
Sorry.
something new going in South Carver and Amado's?
Uh,
Or is it only going to be in North Carver?
So in the existing location, we'll do a straight swap over. And again, in terms of the other location, if at any point that becomes an opportunity for us, then we would
Okay.
apply for the appropriate
I want
permits.
to know where to go to
Thank
get my
you.
sandwiches.
No, but it's just that the CV license applies to any preparation of food. So even if we're there and we're making sandwiches, whatever, we want to make sure that that CV license is there.
So I'm a little confused. Do we need a CV license for for the store at this time in
I
South
believe so,
Carver?
again, because after conversations is that there is prepared food at both locations.
Where is the food prepared in South
Am I
Carver?
right?
I am going to say no.
Okay.
So
You
again.
sell
this
sandwiches,
is-
those prepackaged sandwiches in the
Correct.
refrigerator section? That's probably where it would apply.
Are those
Yes,
prepared
that-
on site?
No.
No,
No,
those would
brought
be
in.
be prepared at the other location. And so in any case, so.
Out of an abundance of caution. We
I'm just
wouldn't mind
reluctant to
having the CV
grant a CV license down in South Carver if there's no operation in
Right, so
place.
So we just want 133 North Main Street for now? We
Yes.
can always come back.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
So 133.
We're here.
North Main Street. I'm sorry.
12 months a year.
Well, we
So-
would like to come back.
I just wanted to make sure that when we walked out, everything was.
No, I appreciate that, but I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'd feel more comfortable if you came back and you had a specific plan for what was going on in South Carver. If there's really no need for it
Correct.
at this time, then the only thing before us is to approve the CV license in the North Carver store.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
You want a separate vote for that, the CV license?
yes, right, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the CV license for 133 North Main Street.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Were there any members of the public that would, yes?
I have a question. Just hearing her say that the preparation was going to be done in North Carver, is there proper transportation to give?
Oh, no, it's not for that store.
Okay.
No, that's it, any preparation, as I understand it, preparation up there is for food served there.
Correct.
No, they have nothing to do
Absolutely.
with the South Carver store.
Correct.
Bob?
Discussion?
Yes.
So, in the store, you do serve pre-prepared sandwiches in that store in South Carver.
Yes, that's correct.
They are made in a separate location, and they actually have stickers on it that say when they were prepared, when they have to be discarded, for staff members to do this. And I just know this because I go in there for that. So that's what they have. And I think it's a separate company that comes in.
It is a
if I'm-
separate company.
That does that.
Yes.
So, and they have the certifications required to do that.
Correct.
I just want to make it clear.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other comments from the public? What's the pleasure of the board?
We've already had a motion.
Oh, do we already have a
and
motion in a second? All right, in that case then.
133 North.
I lost track. All those in favor of granting the common victualer's license to the 133 North Main Street location, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you
Thank you.
again.
We have it all covered
We
now.
appreciate it.
Thank you, I'm glad you caught that. All right, we move to the fence viewer appointment with...
No.
Already did it.
We
Wenham
move to the
Shores.
Wenham Shores Conservation Restriction. I have to stop drinking before the meetings.
Or drink more,
Did I say that out loud? Did I use my outer voice on that?
Mr. Chairman, or drink more heavily.
We move to the Wenham Shores Conservation Restriction, and Joanna Layton would like to discuss this with us.
Okay, one for me, one for you, Tom.
What are you passing out?
There you go. I made copies for each one of you, secretary and Constance.
Thank you.
Whoa, I'm sorry, I'm not
It's all right.
Thanks, Jim.
you could have done this electronically, you have laptops.
Thank you.
Sometimes easy to look on it in paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, just name and addresses, please.
Yes, Joanna Layton, 4 Wenham Shores Drive.
And Tom Mannix, 15 Cranberry Circle.
I would like to, first of all, ask, well, thank you for having us, number one, that all of these documents, please find its way, entry into today's meeting, if you will. What we're here for, and on behalf of Joan, I keep saying Pierce, right? Joan Pierce, yeah. She couldn't be with us tonight to explain all this, so I'm going to read the letter. And then we'll go through these documents. And what we're looking for is permanent access, public access, and we're asking for a conservation restriction. She writes, "Dear Ms. Slayton and Mr. Mannix, I am submitting these comments in expectation that you will pass them on to the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday evening, December 3, 2019. While I am not able to attend the meeting that evening, I look forward to future opportunities to meet with the board and with citizens on this very important topic. To recap, in October 2019, I was contacted by citizens of Carver who expressed concern that the parcel identified as recreation area and the parcel identified as picnic aisle on the recorded plan for Wenham Shores and acquired by the town through tax taking were to be auctioned. Fortunately, the decision was made to remove both parcels from the list of parcels to be auctioned pending further discussion. Steve Hurley, fisheries biologist Southeast District, and I would like to thank the Board of Selectmen for deciding not to auction Lot 73 Recreation Area and Lot 74 Picnic Aisle at this time. We also urge the Board of Selectmen to retain both the recreation area and picnic aisle as permanent open space. The recreation area is the only true public access to Wenham Pond. A sale of the recreation area to a private party would completely and permanently eliminate public access to the pond, including access by Carver citizens, except for the few who own pond front property. Wenham Pond is a marvelous resource for the town. It is very scenic, and it provides wonderful opportunities for fishing and small boat access. Both the recreation area and the picnic aisle provide irreplaceable wildlife habitat and other natural resources enjoyed by the public. We would appreciate an opportunity to discuss with the Board of Selectmen the possible placement of a permanent conservation restriction on both the recreation area and picnic aisle, with such conservation restriction to be held by the Mass Department of Fish and Game. We envision both parcels remaining under town ownership, with a conservation restriction making access by the general public permanent for fishing, boating, and other passive recreational activities. I would be happy to provide to the Board of Selectmen a draft template of a conservation restriction on the recreation area and picnic aisle. The Mass Department of Fish and Game does not require any stewardship endowment for holding a conservation restriction. A survey plan was recorded in 1967, and we have that available to you here. And the Commonwealth will be paying recording fees for the conservation restriction. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Joan Pierce. In front of you, I photoed, and Joan sent these here, to show you the original subdivision plan as it was recorded. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see recreation area and the picnic aisle, which is on the middle of the pond. Those are the two areas that we're talking about for the conservation restriction. When we began this process, we were under the impression, if you look at the second page here that I've included, which is the recreation, it's map 42 from the assessor's office, and you'll see heavy line that she drew in the aisle, and you'll see a question mark. And at the bottom of the legend, it says, "To be compared with lot line, Plan Book 14, page 359. So the assessor drawing, and if you look at the first one we were looking at, which is the subdivision place, you'll notice that the assessor map, which is the GIS, same as the GIS map, is incorrect. It's not correct. The one in the subdivision plan is, and you'll see that Mr. Keith, which is really Mr. Tarara, I think now owns that. You'll see how that land crosses over, and at the cove, he really owns that area. There was some concern about that, and now, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the assessor's map is wrong, and the definitive plan that we are looking at is the correct one to go by. We would like to have the approval and the consensus, obviously, from the selectmen. We would also like the Conservation Commission for their approval. And we also want a warrant article, and we realize we're under the gun for December 6th, which is Friday, so the town folks can approve of it as well. So we're here tonight to ask you, and hopefully, maybe town council could lend some judgment, I'm not quite sure. I have anything, would you like to say, Tom?
No, just the field biologist, Mr. Hurley, was pointing out that that is the only access to this pond. It's a great pond, in terms of Massachusetts law, not just the fact that it's a great pond. If you are representing Wenham Shore, Hands up, thank you. Thank you for representing Wenham Shores. And, you know, also, I wish I could have everybody who has a bass boat in town to raise their hands. This is a great pond. There's fantastic black crappie and yellow perch and a couple of 5-pound bass in there. And everybody loses access to that pond, you know, if we ever lose access to that recreation area. So we just want to make things right, and I'm really grateful to Joanna and especially the folks from Fish and Game for helping us out.
If I could, I'd like to ask Mr. Townsend perhaps to speak a little bit. I'm glad you had residents raise their hand, because my concern was that Mr. Townsend had mentioned that he had been involved with some of the residents there, and there's a lot of confusion because some of the deeds there refer to having access or part ownership, and everyone's deed is written differently. There's no commonality. But I know that when this came up and was explained to the board before, that the board is very favorable to working with the residents to try to come up with a solution. So I'll let Mark address what he experienced, and then try to see whether it's how the ideas are the same or different, and what the residents would prefer.
Thanks. So initially, I think Mr. Mannix was the person that reached out to me, and a whole bunch of folks from the subdivision came down and met with myself and Mr. Malinowski at my office hours. And I think we talked through a number of different things, and a number of people brought me down a copy of their deeds, and you're correct, they all read differently. Some much more detailed, some I think had a sentence and a half. It was totally different on virtually every deed. But I think the important thing was, as you folks have stated tonight, that we stop that property from going to the auction, and we give ourselves some time to find a solution to the problem. And I think that's what we did. There were a number of things we discussed that night. I think we talked about turning that property over to the Recreation Committee. I think there were a couple of residents over there that expressed interest in buying small slivers of land. So there were a number of things that we talked about. And can I just ask, most of the residents here, are you all in agreement that is everyone in agreement that that's the way they want to go? Because I remember we had pretty good agreement that night.
Can you define what you mean by that's the way you want to go?
Well, this proposal that you have.
Okay, great,
have here.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Seems
thank you.
fairly
And
unanimous.
Michael, do you have anything, you were there that night?
Sure, and if I could see, how many people attended that meeting at the office hours? So I see many faces that were here. Great, okay, so you were the same people that were there talking about that. And I guess just to add a little bit more color to that is, at that time, we were looking for some solutions to provide deed ownership so that everyone on your own deed would have direct access to the property. And many people wanted to have that in addition to a conservation restriction, so that you would have it both ways that were there. We did try to work with the attorneys to see if that could be done in that short time frame, and it wasn't able to be done. And at that point, that's when I did pull it from the auction with the full intention, and it's still part of the intention, is that we would be, because what we found out at that time was that it would take town meeting approval to do what we were looking to do. So that is on the docket that we are going to be doing at this annual town meeting, is that we're going to follow through with our commitment. We are actually going to craft the article. If you want to craft an article, you're more than welcome to do that.
I have a little bit of the language
Yeah,
ready to go.
but the point is that we weren't able to auction it off in a way that you each would have had a deeded right to it, which now means we need to bring it to town meeting. At town meeting, there are several different options. One is that with town meeting's approval, we could sell a portion of, or give people, for a nominal amount, call it $50 or something, whatever the number is, to allow you to buy direct right to that so that you would have that in your deed. Or we could go the recreation option that we had talked before, which puts it under a permanent protection. And so either way, we were prepared to go forward with that direction. I will say this new idea of doing it to the state, which we try to keep things local and leave it with our own recreation committee because it would be permanent restriction, is something new, and this was put on the agenda late, so we haven't seen this, is something that if you want to go down that direction, we could certainly pursue that. Or, like any other recreation property in town that's permanently protected, it could go into the recreation committee, or it could go under the town's conservation commission. I think when we start adding state into this, it gets a little bit complicated. But the net result is the same. So whether it's a restriction, a recreation, a conservation, or a state forestry restriction, you still have a restriction. And then the other option is, do people really want to have deeded access to the property? Because again, all the deeds were wrong before, and that was a way of straightening that out. Again, where I want to come back to is, again, this was just put on the agenda late. Mark and I have already been working on this, that this was going to be on the town meeting docket already. Again, as we made the agreement at that meeting, if we couldn't come up with a solution, we were going to cancel the auction. Yep. We did. And so now it's just working out the details, I would say.
Yeah.
Would that be your recollection on that?
I agree.
And again, there are some legal nuances that, again, I think we need some time to take a look at if you really want to go the forestry route. I just am not prepared to talk about that tonight because I didn't know about that.
I can say that we can reserve the spot on the warrant,
Oh, you can?
and yes, it doesn't have to be all perfect
And
by...
Mr. Chairman, that's already
this
been
week.
done, so that's already reserved.
Right, so
for
that's
something
already,
like this.
just in case you were concerned that the wording had to be finalized by the 6th, it
It's
doesn't.
only a slot, it's only reserving an article to solve this, whatever the language is to solve it.
Okay.
And that's already been done.
So they don't need to have something turned in by,
We have accepted the idea that we're going to have an article addressing this issue, but the wording doesn't have to be finalized this week.
Sarah, that's already been
Six.
done by the action we took before, is that since we couldn't do that, we had agreed to put it on the annual town meeting. So we don't necessarily need something from them because it's already in process, but we do want to have another community meeting and explore the different nuances.
Mr.
And I
Mannix?
will say on that too, that we do have time, we have a month or two to work out that language.
Sure. I just wanted to address, we could have had more tonight, but, it snowed, so it didn't snow in October. Not this year, anyway. I thought Mr. Malinowski came up with a really creative idea because we were trying to figure out who's going to own that land. This is not about the ownership of the land, it's about attaching a restriction. And so, this came to us after that meeting. And so, the matter of who still owns the dirt is still out there and needs to be addressed. And so this doesn't really change who owns the dirt, but we like the layer of protection that was described for us by the Fish and Game folks.
Does anybody remember what we did with Crystal Lake last year? This came up at town meeting last year, and I thought that we...
Change the wording.
it was amended so that no one could actually buy the land.
But do you remember what the mechanism, was it a conservation restriction? Was it a recreation restriction? Does
No,
anyone?
no. But if I may, Mr. Chair, so the conservation restriction does two things. It is the way to make permanent protection.
Absolutely.
Because, we
Perpetuity,
have
yes.
seen town-owned
Yep.
parcels get
Yep.
turned into other things or sold.
Absolutely.
So a conservation restriction really is a permanent protection. And I suspect the reason Fish and Game wants to do this is because, as you said, Tom, it's a great pond, meaning it's of a certain size. And the state actually owns Muddy Pond, as well. But for them to be so interested, I just think that's, terrific. And again, a town can't hold its own conservation restriction.
That's right.
And this little phrase here, just in case it was puzzling to people, that Fish and Game does not require any stewardship endowment. Pretty sure what that means is like when we bought the coal property and got a conservation restriction on that, the town couldn't hold that either. So Mass Audubon stepped in.
Okay.
But the town had to pay $10,000. But that's like a permit. It was a one-time fee, and then they permanently come in and sort of make sure everything's okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have to agree with Sarah in that I think and I think this is something we should explore, is the conservation route, because then there's absolutely no question. You can't come back in 30 years and say, well, we really ought to use it for something else.
Right.
That locks it in, over and done with, and gives these folks permanent access.
I think it's safe to say that the board, that after the residents figure out what they think the best approach is and give us their feeling on that we will then craft it along those lines. I think you have the full support of the board to do this, and it's just what's the best legal way to go about it. Personally, when I hear about buying little slivers of it, that almost implies that the residents could get together and say, you can't, I can't go over there and catch my 10-pound bass there.
Yeah, no.
This is the other
Can I,
thing
just
that
to
I was
clarify
going to
that, it
point
was
out.
not to buy slivers, it was to buy partial ownership of that. And the reason for that is that in the discussion we had with everybody, is some people felt that would enhance their land values. When you buy their house and their parcel in here, you've also now have a deeded beach access.
No, I understand
That
what,
would have
but
in there.
if there are choices, I'd rather make sure
Right.
that the public has access to the.
And that's the second point that I forgot to make earlier, is that not only will the residents have access to
Right.
the beach that they have now.
Yes.
But the town
The
will
whole
have
town
access.
will.
And,
Right.
and it'll be in
And
perpetuity.
so the whole town can enjoy the public use
Right.
the way we've been able to.
Right.
And so
And
that's
that'll-
what we want.
Yep.
We want to broaden it. And if, talked about Mr. Malinowski, can I call you Mike?
Well, Michael,
He's been called
Okay.
worse.
When Mike refers to somebody in the development that they met with Mr. Townsend, one of the suggestions was, I believe, he wanted to buy a piece. If you look at this map, this, which is drawn incorrectly, by the way, that's where that person thought he could buy a little chunk. Well, he can't buy a chunk because it doesn't, it was drawn incorrectly. So if you go back to this map, the actual subdivision map, which was drawn correctly, it'll show you that Mr. Tarara, he owns all the way to the cove, a little chunk of that. So there, that's saleable, is not, you know,
The panhandle does not exist.
Can't-
And that was, as I recall, there was a lot of confusion that night with the maps, that there were different maps,
Right.
and it was a little confusing. But I think the important thing, and I think there's agreement on the board, that something needs to be done to ensure the neighborhood access and townwide access to that area, because it's a really important area, and we need to preserve it. So I think moving forward, you'll find you have a lot of support here in the board and hopefully a town meeting.
Just for purposes of clarification for the residents, I'd ask the town administrator, who would you suggest if they want to have a couple of representatives working with the town on crafting this? Who would you represent the contact to be?
Well, I think Mr. Townsend and I will continue to be the liaison to you guys working on that. I think that, and I guess a question from a show of hands here is, as Sarah mentioned, there's a conservation piece, whether it's Conservation Commission, Recreation, whether it's forestry, that's a conservation restriction on it. But then there's also a deed piece, and I guess as we start to craft this, you know, I just want to know if the sentiment's still there, that people would still like to own interest in this land tied into their deed, and they'd like a conservation restriction, so you're double protected.
Can I, before I turn to our bunch, the peanut gallery, literally, no offense, buddy. You know, to me, my property value is enhanced when I'm next to conservation land. I don't think there's a lot of support, but I'll let you guys speak to it in terms of like owning, part ownership in something that we just want to keep it the way it is, which is everybody has access to that strip of sand.
That's right.
Are we in agreement with that, about that?
So public access, conservation.
sorry,
res-
there's
This is
one hand in the back.
Dario.
Question. That means those who have deeded rights is still in their, when they sell their house, that's still their deeded right, correct? Or that-
For some of the properties that have that in there, and again, just for the
That will
public's
change.
clarification, is that unfortunately, when this subdivision was done, it wasn't properly filed and all of the deeds weren't properly created with the same language, which is why none of this showed up in the deed research when this happened, and that's what we're here trying to fix after the fact.
But my question would be also, since that property went to foreclosure and was subsequently seized by the town,
Right.
doesn't that negate any ownership that the deed might, that's like, they'd have?
So, no, it doesn't, because of their deeds were independent, so it's cloudy. I'll just leave it at that, is that they still technically own something to something, but because the deeds
Well,
weren't really
you know,
clear
they-
there.
and they-
What we're going to do is, by doing this conservation piece, and now I thank you for doing that, so now I see, we're just going to go the conservation
Right.
route, whichever mechanism A, B, or C option it is, that's how we'll craft an article. We'll put it under conservation. If you have a deed, you still have access to it, but really, it's going to be conservation, so
That's right.
what's the difference?
Right, and the restriction, if I may, doesn't mean, is not really a bad word. It just means it can't be built on. So in that restriction, you list the things that can't happen there. You can't build a house, or you can't build a, power plant or whatever.
Essentially
it is.
preserving it in its current state, isn't it?
Yes, but you have to spell that sort of thing out in a conservation restriction, so which I'm sure
Right,
Fish and Game.
so at some point, we could make Joan wants to come back. She wants to create this template. She wants to present that to you, the selectmen. It's a matter of time, it's between their opportunity to come as well as another meeting, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're all really in agreement, so all we need is to have a form that's acceptable to the residents, that preserves it and protects the.
So I could
the
go
property.
ahead with a green light to ask Joan to create that template for the restrict, I think it's like many pages, it's not just one page.
Yeah, and again, I would consult with Mr. Malinowski and Mr. Townsend, because I would think that you're not reinventing the wheel, that this should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, an agency like that will have a template, and you plug in the,
Okay.
important things, the map and lot, and the language that they specifically want.
Bob, do you have something else?
Yeah. The Fish and Wildlife, they're extremely helpful in this when they go through this. We actually have one on Meadow Street, that the property they purchased, the pond back there, and they do this. This is what they do for a living, is to get property, protect the property, protect it from development, but open it up to people. Anyone can go into these properties and go use the fishing, the wildlife. With that property, me driving by it a couple of times already and looking at the maps for this, there's no access to a motorboat to drive down there. I don't remember
Well, there
seeing
is,
that.
actually. It's just not a very big one because, you'd need all four wheels engaged to get off. Most people get down part way. We have a canoe that we portage down there. It's kayaks and canoes and very small john boats.
Right, and then that's something that, with your conservation restriction for it, is to turn around and limit if you're gonna have a certain type of motor or whatnot, or something like that.
Right.
Or just be battery powered, just for, protect yourselves from the neighbors or whatnot, everyone that lives around there.
After our meeting in October, we did, we had a conference out in the parking lot, and, there was some concern that going recreation instead of conservation means now we're building a Monpont Pond type boat ramp, and now you have, 55 horsepower, rooster
We don't have
tails.
the
And you
money
can,
for that.
with the
You
conservation
don't want that.
restriction that you do with this,
Right.
you can set in those parameters of what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Right. Okay.
Plus, it actually opens up money from the Fish and Wildlife and for conservation groups to help if there's something wrong out there. You get issues with a lot of weeds or anything like that, they can help mitigate some of those. So
Great.
it does open us up to other grants.
Mr. Chairman, there's one thing I just want to make sure everybody's aware of, because this conversation came up, is, several of you have deeded access to the pond, and it's your recreation area, is what the intent was when this subdivision was done. The intent was not that this would be a town-wide public access. It was for, and again, unfortunately, the deeds weren't done correctly. By going to Fish and Wildlife, is be careful what you ask for, and I'm just making sure everybody understands this for full disclosure, is that by doing that, again, it has statewide access at this point because it's Division of Fishery and Wildlife. Anyone around the state, you can have bass boats, anything, come down there, they can park along the streets, there's no restriction to do that. If you also are, if you take any money, then they have to provide some additional access to that. So that was my caution to everybody, is just be aware that by going the state route versus, doing the deeded piece that was there, is that you are opening up to not only everybody in town, but everybody outside of town too. So I just caution that for you guys to think about, and maybe, Mr. Maddox, you can talk to everybody one more time out in the parking lot and just confirm that everyone's aware of that, and then come back and
the
meet.
building if you want to.
Yeah.
It's cold out tonight.
But
And then
again,
come back and meet with, Mark and I, and we can, put the final language together, whichever way you guys want to move. But there's clearly a direction from the board that they're supportive of whatever the residents want to be done.
I was just going to say that in a conservation restriction, you can say what kinds of boats are allowed. And if
Right,
it's,
Bob
if the,
mentioned that.
yeah, I mean, you don't have to let them have, as a matter of fact, I don't think jet skis are allowed on any pond under state law, except for Sampson's.
We'll
But
definitely
I could
take
be
that into
wrong. I mean,
consideration.
it's something to ask Ms. Pierce here.
Yeah. Again, my point is that we mentioned this 5-pound bass out there. All of a sudden, you might get some canoes from New York trying to catch the 5-pound bass.
Well, they can come to our town hall, too, it's a public space.
At any rate, I think we have a consensus. First of all, the article will be on the town meeting warrant.
Okay.
You have I think you have a clear consensus that however you would like the article crafted, we will support.
Okay.
And just work with the town administrator and Mr. Townsend to craft that article so it's acceptable to the residents. And I'm sure it'll have a 5-0 recommendation from this board to support it at town meeting.
And I just have one quick question. I don't believe you need to go through the Conservation Commission, but I'm not positive. I don't think you do, because it's town-owned and it's Fish and Game.
Well,
Although it wouldn't hurt to have their support.
yeah, I
Of
kind
course, yeah.
of, let's see,
Why don't we see what they come up with?
Yeah.
Private meeting, and then we'll solve it from what they tell us.
right.
Do you have anything there?
I thought I have it down here someplace. Authorize, in the warrant itself, I crafted some language, talking with some people like Joan and so forth. We would ask the town to transfer care and control of town-owned parcel, map 42, lot 73, parenthesis, recreation area, and lot 74, parenthesis, picnic aisle, Plan Book 14, page 359, to the Town of Carver Conservation Commission, and authorize disposition of CR, conservation restriction, interests to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Fish and Game.
Okay. That's
And I wrote this, now we have two protections in perpetuity, and it would also trigger as Article 97 of the state constitution.
Which is, I think, what we did for Crystal Lake last year as well, so. So, again,
No, we-
however the residents want it crafted,
Okay.
you have the support of the board to go forward. We understand your idea is to protect it, preserve it, and not have it available to
Right.
be seized by
Right.
anyone, so.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you,
Thank you very
Joanna.
much.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very
Chairman,
much.
I'd like to thank all the residents that took the time out on a chilly night to come here and support this. I
Absolutely.
think that's really great.
Yeah, thank you all.
It's a great place, Wenham Shores. I've been there 47 years.
You're showing your age, Joanna.
I know. That's okay.
Well, that just means she moved there when she was 1.
Yeah,
She helped him with the building.
yeah, right.
Oh, it's that. The freshman in high school, working at Tesla. But I ain't getting to let that get up there.
We're going to take a 2-minute break. Just started my watch.
Do I need to take a motion for that?
Pardon me?
As being a smart aleck.
Peter? I don't know if we have a left. All right, next item on the agenda. Mr. Townsend had asked way back, I think in July and August, if we could have a review of all longstanding committees that no longer meet or serve their original purpose. And we identified a bunch of those, and we exercised extra caution by taking this amount of time to try to reach out to all the committees and make sure that multiple efforts were made to speak with the folks that were associated with those committees to see if they had an interest in maintaining the committees, and also what their reasoning would be, or if they felt they were perfectly content to have the meetings, the committees dissolved.
And Mr. Chairman, just a quick point. I don't think this should be just this year. I think we should have this discussion every year before town meeting, so, we can make recommendations or just address this, so we don't have commissions kicking around out there that just haven't met for years, so.
All right, we will start, everyone should have it in their agenda packet that we have a list of committee boards, the contact, and the result of the response. The audit committee, Brian Lozon was the contact, and he agreed that it could be dissolved. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move we dissolve the audit committee.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The Bike Path Committee, Jennifer Bogart, I know from talking to Elaine that emails and letters were sent to Jennifer with no response, so that we have no feedback one way or the other about the Bike Path Committee.
I have a comment.
Okay.
So I think, looking at this list, the fact that we just recently approved our Complete Streets program, whatever you want to call it, that includes bike paths. And so I think, I mean, there may be, I don't know, I have no clue, but maybe there are extenuating circumstances why Jen didn't respond. But I mean, I feel like we should have something like that in place, just simply because we just got into this Complete Streets program.
Yeah,
And,
Mr. Chairman, I was going to bring up the same thing. I mean, we had this nice board downstairs in the hallway about complete streets. I don't know if maybe we want to maybe come up, appoint new people to it that may be willing to be more active. Get with Jennifer, see if she's still interested in being on it. So maybe do a reorg of the Bike Path Committee, or rename it as part of the Complete Streets.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we have to reach out to Jen and see if
Well,
she still has
again, I
time.
mean, she's an active member in the town. She's on the planning board, I believe, and letters and emails went, the thing that concerns me is that letters and emails were sent, and there was no response over, a couple of month period, and that, I just don't understand, just out of, how do you just not respond?
Perhaps we could keep the Bike Path Committee in existence, though, and maybe whether it has to be reorganized or however, whether we add new members, but.
Well, the other take would be to dissolve it and then recreate it if it's necessary.
Well, I think something like it is necessary if we're going to have a real Complete Streets program.
I agree. I think it needs to be in because of the Complete Streets. My preference would be to just put it as a blank and put it in a whole, seek out applicants for a whole new committee.
I agree.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion, we keep the Bike Path Committee on the books, and we repost it out for people interested in that.
I'll second that.
I think it's a good idea, too.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The Carver Municipal Affordable Housing, Frank Casey as the contact. No record of any meetings and no response.
Again, Mr. Chairman, through you, I have a question about this, is that we need affordable housing in our towns. What was the purpose of this committee?
Sort of like, what was the charter of the committee?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know there was some money put toward the trust, a municipal trust account. I think it was like $97,000 or something like that.
And do you
put
believe
toward
that
it.
was in the custody of this
Well,
committee?
I'm not sure if it was this committee or who it was entrusted for, if it was actually given back or whatnot. I think Joanna Layton was on the Municipal Housing Trust
Yes.
Committee or something like that.
Mr. Chairman, before I can reach an informed decision on this one, I really need to see what the charter was for this particular committee before I decide to say, axe it or keep it but reorganize or something like that. I'd really like to see that charter.
And Mr. Chairman, one other thing is that, doing some more research for it to look at funds or whatnot for affordable housing for our town, I did find some that we could use, and we may be able to find using this type of committee useful in looking for the town. So I make a motion, we keep this on the books right now until we find out more about the actual committee or what their charter was, and also what could come on in the
I'll
future.
second that.
Yeah.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I made a motion.
You asking for a vote?
Second.
All those in favor, it's been made and seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So that will be maintained. The Fire Station Building Committee, Bill Harriman, he would like the committee dissolved. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Resolve it.
I second.
Further discussion?
I don't see that
I
on
don't
the
see it on
agenda.
here either.
Yeah, it's there.
The Fire Station Building
Fourth
Committee?
one down.
It's not on the agenda.
Well,
don't
it's in the backup information that's in the agenda.
Right, but it's not on the agenda.
What are you looking at? Because I'm looking at the actual
If
agenda.
you scroll
posted.
down,
Yeah, but this
There
is
is
what
backup
people see.
information?
They don't see the backup information. This is what the public sees.
all right, we will table the Fire Station Building Committee on a technicality until the next meeting. Do you have the Local Housing Partnership?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
Table that.
Mr. Chairman, when I looked at the agenda here, it says one thing. When you go further down, where all these other committees that we have here, was that put as an attachment to the agenda with all the information? Because we get one thing sent to us.
I don't believe it, if you went to the, out to the website and opened the agenda, that attachment would be there.
Right, so I think that we can't really vote
Okay.
on some of
I
those
didn't
things.
realize that the agenda was
Only-
varying so much from what is listed on that.
I would suggest you stick with the agenda.
All right, so let's see, we go to the Municipal Playground Committee then. Sarah Hewins is chair. Sarah would like it to be kept active.
Well,
You want a
actually,
motion made before discussion?
let me just point out that my committee, of which I'm the chair, met in August, and at that meeting, which they haven't filed the minutes for yet, they voted to meet quarterly. I asked them point blank what they wanted to do.
No, I understand.
That
I
was-
watched the meeting before coming here tonight.
Okay, so that's what they said.
And they also said that it was up to the Board of Selectmen to determine whether to
Correct.
dissolve it. They actually couldn't dissolve it themselves.
Correct. And we haven't met in November like we were going to because a member of the committee had a death in the family. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Yes.
to make a motion for discussion.
Okay?
I move that we dissolve the Municipal Playground Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
All right, discussion.
My main thing is the fact that we've already, it's been dismantled, plus or minus, people like it, don't like it, but we've given over to the Recreation Committee all the recreation space in the town, including the new playground. I think to have two entities trying to have input and control on that is just going to lead to confusion. And I think the Recreation Committee has done an excellent job so far, and I see no reason to go ahead and try to muddy the waters by having a separate committee be part of the playground. So that's my rationale, and, better for worse, that's the way I feel.
I watched the August 26th meeting prior to this meeting tonight because I wanted to be informed as to what the purpose of the discussion was. And two things that struck me was that there was the head of the Recreation Committee was there and specifically requested that the Playground Committee, invited them to assist them. And that one of the agenda items was, did the Municipal Playground Committee want to formally determine to assist the Recreation Committee on the playground, and they took no action. There was no vote. Nobody was interested in making a motion to do so. So the Municipal Playground Committee expressed no interest in working with the Recreation Committee on the new playground.
Mr. Chairman, I attended that meeting, and it went beyond that. There were two members that stated flat out they had no interest, and there's no way they would help the Recreation Committee.
Fine, but my point is that the committee had the opportunity to justify continuing on that basis. And then when they talked about the idea of dissolving, one of the members said the only reason that they had was just to make sure through follow-up that all the memorial stuff that's associated with the old playground be carried over to the new playground. There was really very little justification for the continuance of a municipal playground committee for a playground that now no longer exists. So and it was dormant up until the whole issue came up again. I mean, they hadn't met for years until the whole issue of the police station and the playground came up again. So I would support dissolving the committee. Further discussion?
So my question on this is that, what is the purpose of the Municipal Playground Committee? All right, what is the purpose of it? what is it? And really, I mean, if we're now saying that the Recreation Commission is now going to be in charge of all the playgrounds and everything here, the only other playground that I know right now is the one on Bates Pond Road there. There's that small one there. Is there a committee for that playground? Or is that part of the municipal playground committee that we have now, or is the recreation
I
committee?
believe that also falls under the category of the Recreation Committee.
Okay.
The original, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Ewan, was that this was created for the establishment and overseeing and upgrading of the old playground.
So that being said, I mean, if there's no reason for it now, and unless there's another playground that comes up to be built and that the municipal playground committee wants to come back and say, we want to be part of it, and the people are interested, then they have that opportunity. And some of the people that were on that municipal playground committee I think they should jump on board with the recreation committee and help out with them. That's all I can ask, so
But
I agree.
I do
that-
agree with Mr. Dunham that there could be a clash, and I think you can't have two committees handling the same property, and I think that's what you're going to have right now with the new playground, with the Recreation Committee and the Municipal Playground Committee. I just think you have two different committees. Yeah, I think we need to let the Recreation Committee take the lead and go forward from there.
Well, again, I was struck by when the question came up about, posed by the gentleman from Recreation as to whether the Recreation Committee, the Playground Committee itself or any of its members wanted to help. Only one member spoke about wanting to get involved in the new playground. Then the rest were either silent or not interested, so. At any rate, further discussion? Being none, those in favor of dissolving municipal playground, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
The ayes have it. Let me see here.
OPEB study?
OPEB Study Committee, Steve Pratt, he agrees it can be dissolved. Pleasure of the board.
Motion to dissolve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Then we have the Open Space Committee. Conservation agent believes this was established before the CPA tax. Now CPC oversees open space. No agendas or minutes on file at the clerk's office.
I move we dissolve the Open Space Committee.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yes. First of all, that's an incorrect statement. CPC does not oversee open space in town. That is the sole purview of the Carver Conservation Commission, and it's in Chapter 40, Section 8C, the Conservation Commission Act. I believe the reason that misstatement was in there is because the CPC was in charge of making sure when their money was spent to purchase the coal property, for example, that money was spent the way it was intended to be spent. Having said that, now that that's done, this Community Preservation Committee is not up there at the coal property monitoring, the trails. And that's the job of the Carver Conservation Commission. Now, having said that, I would like to also to add, you can get rid of this committee, but the truth is that if we, I think you looked up some funds that the town has for purchasing land for open space protection, and if we don't have some sort of committee that's going to upgrade the open space and recreation plan, we can apply for the funds till we're blue in the face from the state, but they won't give it to us because.
Does it have to be an open space committee as opposed to conservation
not
or Board of
necessarily.
Selectmen or anybody else?
It has to come through the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
And, I think there's also an open space and recreation plan update committee, or at least there was when I was there, and that's how we updated it. It was made up of some members from the Conservation Commission, some other people who were just interested. And I believe that the original charge of this open space committee was to try to identify parcels that if they did come down the pike and the owner was interested in selling them, they would have a map and they'd say, well, yeah, that's a priority parcel, or no, it's not, forget about it. I think that's the original purpose of this committee. So again, you know, you can get rid of it, but I just really want to remind people, our open space and recreation plan is out of date.
Right, but this committee's not needed to update it. It can be done through the
Somebody
Conservation
is.
Committee.
Somebody is.
Well, given that there's no agendas or minutes on file at the clerk's office for any meetings of this committee,
Do we even know, there's not even a chairman listed here. Do we even know who the chairman of the Open Space Committee is?
that wasn't
No?
available.
That goes back years. It's, yeah.
Did someone want to make a motion about what to do with the Open Space Committee?
I move we dissolve the Open Space Committee.
No? I'll second that.
Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
The ayes have it. The Tax Relief Study Committee, I chaired that. We were successful. It passed. It's now in place. And the committee has not met since it passed its article on to town meeting. And it was subsequently approved by the legislature, so there's no need for the committee to continue to exist.
Mr. Chairman, I move we dissolve the Tax Relief Study Committee.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The Town Building Study Advisory Committee and Pre-Disaster...
Those are separate.
Oh, those are
committees.
separate? Okay.
They're separate.
It's odd the way that's written. Town Buildings Study Advisory Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I move we dissolve the Town Building Study Advisory
Well,
Committee.
let me just mention Steve Pratt was chair. Per Steve, has not met since 2015. Advisory Commission to Select Board should have automatically disbanded per bylaws. Leave it to Steve to actually go into detail the fact that it shouldn't even exist. So given Steve's recommendation, there's a motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Those in favor in favor of dissolving the Town Building Study Advisory Committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We move on to now the,
Pre-disaster sorry. Sorry.
we move on now to the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Committee. Tom Waltz, Chair. Per Tom, ceased to exist when the Board of Selectmen adopted hazard mitigation on April 19th, 2016.
I'll make a motion, we disband this.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yes, so I have to respect Tom's opinion on this, but I just do want it known that the pre-disaster mitigation, the hazard mitigation plan that he's talking about is another requirement of the state. And so at some point, I mean, this committee can also be reappointed, even though we're not, dealing with the nuclear plant in the future. We still have like hazards and disasters. I mean, we have hurricanes, we have nor'easters, and that's what's in that mitigation plan.
And I believe Tom's thinking is that it can still be updated. You don't need the committee in order to do that.
He's probably right. No, you need a committee to update it. That's a
But you
requirement.
don't, this committee at this time doesn't have to remain in existence for it.
That's what he says, yep.
Was there a motion to disband this committee?
Yes, in a second.
In a second, okay. Further discussion, those in favor of disbanding the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. That brings us to an update from Mr. Belbin on the Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse Disposal District. And we have a lot of bullet points here, Bob, if you want to walk us through what's going on here.
All right, so Carver's at a unique position right now. The only skin in the game with the district that we have is the South Carver landfill. That's the only thing we have. We don't own land for a transfer station. We have no money right now for a transfer station. We don't have any plans for a transfer station in Carver. Unfortunately, Wareham and Marion do.
Excuse me, Wareham has plans for a transfer station?
If they have decided to follow Carver's former lead with the amount of money that for their stickers, they went to $40, and same with Marion went to $40. Marion's intent is to take over the Marion site and keep that open for their residents.
Just for Marion residents?
Just for Marion residents. Wareham knows they need something. All right, we have nothing. We have no plans except for let the residents fend for themselves. dealing with waste.
Does Wareham believe a $40 sticker is going to fund the cost of running a transfer station?
No, it's going to give them startup money, though. It's going to give them some, they have over 5,000 stickers that they sell. So, I mean, it'll give them some startup money. But with that being said, I want to look to the future. I want us as selectmen to look to the future. That's why we have these bullet points here. The first one's an easy one. The district has decided to have 2 more hazardous waste days for next year. We just need to know if they can use the same facility we did this year. Once they get that agreement from the town of Carver, they can go ahead and book it for next year.
Do they need the board's approval for that, or could?
No, the answer is yes, Bob, they can.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and the district does too. It was very successful. The second bullet point here is to support the Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse Disposal District as a district to reduce to a skeleton community.
Or to reduce to a
Or to reduce. So with this being said is that we have to support the district to keep moving forward, to keep it as a district in place. And that they can run a transfer station. The other option is to keep it as a skeleton committee just to pay off all the bills and everything that come through, because we're going to have issues in 20, 30 years going in the future and
And I was going to
whatnot.
say, and did you indicate at a previous meeting that there's enough of a nest egg to cover future liabilities?
Well, we don't know, Mr. Chairman, because we still have to negotiate with Marion leaving the district. They've already said they don't want to leave.
Marion says they do not want to leave?
No, they do want to leave.
Right.
They've already started the process. At the last meeting, their kind of a hiccup came into play, is that if the district stays open, then we'll possibly keep the Marion station open, use that a couple days a week, and if the district stayed open, we could do some renovations to the Route 28 site while that's being done, and then when we're all done using that Marion site, we can give it back to Marion and they can have it. But those are things between the waste district and Marion has to negotiate out. That's if the board says we want to keep that item. The other one is to reduce to a skeleton committee, and this was where discussions came in, where the district itself would not run a transfer station. And just the district would be there, small group of people, meet a couple times a year just to pay the bills, and that's it. That's all they'll be there for.
And they have to remain in existence because of the outstanding liabilities?
Correct. I'm going to move to the next bulletin point, and so you understand the different options. Does the select board support continuing a transfer station through the waste district or a municipal agreement with Wareham? Now, this was brought up at the last meeting, and it's really interesting that it was put this way, is that we can run it, keep the district going here, and keep a transfer station running through the district. But there's another option, is going through a municipal agreement where the town of Wareham and the town of Carver get together, and the town administrators get together and decide on, okay, we want to keep a district going, we want to keep a transfer station for our residents, all right? And instead of going through to the district, we have this other agreement between us that will work together to keep the process going and give people the services that they need. It also opens the door up to opening up to other municipalities, whether it be Rochester, because Rochester's going to have an issue with the waste too, because they use the Route 28, and there's a whole nother ballgame there with Rochester and Cavanter about Cavanter's supposed to provide them a transfer station for their residents, but now they don't know if they do or they don't, so there could be a legal battle then. But Rochester's still going to need something for some of their residents that use that. So there's a possibility of gaining another person into the game here through a municipal agreement. And that's where the next one comes, is does the select board have any interest in including Rochester or another town into a district or municipal agreement? Are you interested or not? We kind of need to know where we're going, because when we go back to our next meeting, the 3 members, we have to have a front that says, hey, there is support here to go forward. and this is where we're looking at going. The next one is, will the select board support a 2-year with a possible 1-year extension period for the waste district or a municipal agreement to continue the availability of having a transfer station located in Rochester or Wareham or wherever else they determine? So that's another question. The next one is the select board interested in having its own transfer station in Carver? Something we have to look at. Do we want that or not? The issue that we have with that, the district has 2 licenses. One in Rochester and one in Marion. If we lose Marion, Marion's going to take that other one. The only one's left with Rochester, and if Carver doesn't want it, Wareham's going to take it. All right, and whether we go with Wareham or Wareham has their own, they're going to take that license too. So,
Bob, the license are site-specific. Wareham can't take the license, move it to Wareham, it's for the Rochester facility.
exactly, but they can still take it and use that facility, so.
They can use the Rochester.
Right. Is the select board interested in having its own transfer station? I just did that. Is there any other option for reduced cost of household waste? I don't see any other way to reduce costs, I mean, for the residents with this. We really have to ask that question, is we have 1,900 people to get stickers. All right, and we have 11,500 residents, and we have, what, 7,000 homes? Something like that in town, somewhere around there. And 1,900 people for residents are picking up those stickers. Well, that's over 10%, 20% of the residents.
Is that last year's figure, or?
Well, 11,005 was just put in the paperwork for now.
Mr. Chairman, question. Bob, maybe you can answer it, or if not, Mr. Malinowski. Is there a difference between for liability if we pull out of the district or the district folds? In other words, the district decides we're going to go ahead and we're done with this. So is there a difference in liabilities?
You want to answer it, you can, Michael.
Yeah, is there a difference in liability? So the way the enabling legislation is set up is, should the district not be able to pay its bills, then the towns on a prorated share would have to pay whatever bills exist in the district. Now that goes for if anyone leaves the district, they would also have to pay their prorated share, or that would have to be negotiated as a lump sum payment. And I just want to clarify that Marion in order to leave the district, a town, Carver, Marion, Wareham, has to take 2 votes. The first vote, which Marion has taken, and I'm going to be recommending this at town meeting for Carver to do, and the first vote is to authorize the town to negotiate and explore the options of leaving the district. Doesn't mean you have to leave the district. It just means you now have the right to explore what those costs and impacts are going to be. That is all Marion has done. Once that has been completed, then Marion can choose to go to town meeting a second time and say, okay, we want to leave the district, and here's what the cost is, or we don't want to leave the district. But without taking that first vote, you can't negotiate that. So again, I'm going to be recommending that goes forward to town meeting, just to give the town the flexibility, like Marion, to negotiate that with no commitment that it is going to leave, but that it starts to explore what the options are. But the end of the day, when we're looking at long-term liability, is that there is long-term liability for the employees that have worked the district, both pension and OPEB liabilities. In addition to that, and those funds exist to cover that today. There's over $800,000 available in the district right now that they could put aside by a vote of the district to put those into a reserve fund that can only be used for paying those unfunded liabilities. That is a vote the vote can take today.
Has the district done that yet, Bob?
No, it has not, because we also have, if Marion goes forward, and this is where I said it, there was a snag at the last meeting that we had when it was discussed that if the district stays, we're not going to give the property back to Marion, because we could use that property. As long as the district owns that property usage, all right, then we can use it if we're fixing up the Route 28. And they didn't know that beforehand. So that puts a little monkey wrench into their plans for the future, but it may not, because they have to negotiate out of the district agreement, and that's got to be negotiated through the district, and that hasn't, we're starting to develop the documents to how to get out of the district, because those aren't even there yet, but we need to craft those, and we have a lawyer doing that for us, through the district.
The second liability after the OPEB and the pension, which again, I would argue is money is there. When I first got involved in the district, they were in the red. Now, through the other town administrators, we were able to build up a nest egg that they have $900,000. We did that purposely, knowing the district was most likely going to end, and we didn't want to burden the towns with a long-term liability, so we wanted to have that money set aside to cover that. The district also has equipment and other assets that it can sell to also put into a fund like that. The second liability is the closure of the landfill. And right now, I believe it's a $10 or $20 million bond, I forget what the number is, that's already been established by DEP for what's called a FAM, Financial Assurance Mechanism. And there's already insurance to make sure that the landfill does close down 30 years. It's for post-monitoring to make sure the landfill doesn't leak. So that's the second component that's there, that there's going to be long-term monitoring. But again, money is set aside for that. So when there's talk of going down to a skeleton crew, it would just be the district would go to a skeleton body, because the legislation doesn't state how the district would dissolve. It would say, okay, all three towns, you're going to go back and vote to move this to a skeleton crew with two functions. One is to pay off the pension debt as it's needed, or put the money aside, you don't have to worry about it again, because you can prepay your pension, or, and to make sure that with the closure of the landfill, that all of the FAM components are being done and the process is done for the next 30 years. They would have no other power to run a district, to do anything else, but for those two tasks that were there. And that was something that the lawyer recommended was probably the easiest way to move forward with the whole district. So, I mean, that's what you're looking at from a liability, is that there is a way of solving it, provided the money's not spent for something else. And I think, Bob, the district did vote 2 meetings ago not to put any more money into, buying a new rig, a new truck.
Right,
and
we have an issue with 2 trucks down in Marion. What they do is, over there you go and you dump your trash into this big trailer, and they had 2 rigs there, and they would drive those up to Covanta, dump them off there, and then go back. And they would go back and forth. Well, one rig died. And Wareham was nice enough to say, we have one, we can use ours. When you need it, we'll use it for that. So Wareham has been very forthcoming in doing a lot of work for the district. They cleaned up the site. They're now using their own equipment. And the district is paying for that, and the district gets reimbursed from Covanta to pay for those fees to do that. But they put that out there. So they've shown an interest in their wanting to keep the district or going toward a municipal agreement. Either way, they just need some guidance from us for it.
So what are you looking for us to do tonight?
You know what?
Which is going to be hard, because we're just seeing this for the first time.
Right.
I totally understand, and part of the issue has been how much is it going to cost in the future for sticker fees and to keep it running. And I mean, the money's going to go back and forth. I mean, $250, $300, $350, $200. It all depends on how.
And Bob,
we do.
that's just for running the facility.
Just for running the facility. No, that includes the disposal of the trash.
No, it does, never did. Not when the director provided.
Again,
It was
as soon as
one-
we start talking
yeah,
numbers,
yeah, I know.
it gets confusing.
So-
Bob, could I just ask you to
Yes.
put the last bullet point?
Okay.
Where the idea of the preferred hauler comes up?
Right.
Because if you remember, we were all a little perplexed why town meeting
Town
didn't
meeting,
want us to
right.
explore a single hauler,
Okay.
just as a lark, to see what it might cost.
I put that in there for a reason. If the district stays alive or goes to a municipal agreement, we can have a preferred hauler for the town, and that preferred hauler will get a reduced fee based on what our fees are to Covanta. Only one company. That's what was discussed. And if we have this ability to say, hey, okay, fine, it gives the town an option to say, okay, we do have a preferred hauler. After 2020,
Just on that, though, is not all haulers use Cavanta. Waste Management doesn't use Cavanta, so you couldn't give them reduced fee.
correct.
Right. So if they were the low bidder, how can you offer them a reduced fee?
Well, we wouldn't, because this would be only if someone goes to Cavanda. If Waste Management wants to use their own facility, that's on them. All right, but they're also $600 and something a year.
Yeah,
So-
I pay $280.
Because you were under the old agreement with,
No, Waste
Holland.
Management doesn't use, yeah, with
you
Howland,
were, you were part of Howland first.
Right.
So your contract with Howland, all right, Cavanta, yeah, sorry, Waste Management took over that contract. Once that contract's gone, you're not going to keep that low figure. You may want to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been over a year and a half, I think I've been
I
on
don't know what
Waste
your
Management.
contract was with them, but.
Yeah. Anyway,
So needless to say, I put that out there because that's a possibility of some savings for the residents if we have a preferred hauler.
I mean, the town of Carver, when we put it to town meeting said we're not interested. Couldn't the district sort of explore, what, find a take some bids and, because if you came back and said that the impact on the average resident would be $200, just to pick a number, that's a discussion point we could have. It would go into people's taxes, but, I'm paying X amount now, you're paying, the sticker fee would definitely not be $50 if we were doing it on our own. So I throw it out that while the town of Carver, based on our town meeting, can't do it for itself, maybe the district could do it for, I guess it would be
Well-
Wareham and, even Marion wouldn't have an interest, wouldn't they?
See, this is where I have an issue with, if you ask people at town meeting, do you know anything about what I've been going through and what I've been talking about, all right, since I got on the district? Okay, I don't think they know the ramifications of how much it's going to cost them in the future for waste fees. Okay, whether it's through the district or through a municipal agreement, but also if there was nothing at all, come 2021 in January, find your own hauler and pay it, whatever it's going to be.
I mean, we've done our best to try to get it out there. I mean, I think it was mentioned
Well,
at town meeting, and I know when Dave Robertson had your position, he mentioned several times, from where you're sitting, that the fees could go up 3, 4, 5 times what we're currently paying. So that, we've been trying to let the residents know that at the end of 2020, we're just not clear. And, I've said this before, not to be a broken record, but I completely support having our own transfer station, but it's all about the money. What's it going to cost? Because I go back to the North Carver landfill where we were assured that that there was going to be enough money coming in, that it was going to be a neutral situation to the town, and we're putting $250,000 a year of tax revenue away to cover that, because as it turned out, we didn't get the numbers signing up for the water that we thought we were. So
Right.
that's what concerns me, is burdening taxpayers who are not currently paying for, waste removal, especially if they end up subsidizing for people that want to use a transfer station and they don't use a transfer station. So that, it's been the same question we've been kicking around, is how do we get good numbers? Because that's how we can make an informed decision.
Well, the only numbers we have are the numbers that we have right now. With us going down to a $10 fee, we're not going to have any other good numbers coming in. So what we have is what we got, in my own opinion. So this is my recommendation. And if you guys are for it, fine. If you're against, that's fine too. But my opinion is that we should go to a skeleton committee for the district where we just do the bills, and we join a municipal agreement with Wareham and other towns for 2 years with a 1-year extension for it, so we can give the municipal agreement an opportunity to show that we can save money, run it better, and offer a service to the residents that is comparable or better than what they have now.
Do you have any sense as to what that would cost the town of Carver?
Can I just suggest you break those into two things? Because I agree with the first part of Bob, what he said is that, he would like some direction that the town would like to go into a skeleton crew for the district. And that seems to be the way to go with the district as a whole. When it comes to the municipal agreement, then we're back into the number discussion. But I think you can get at least, I think Bob can get one positive vote out of the board tonight to follow his recommendation of skeleton crew.
But isn't that, if we decide to go to this, aren't we then ruling out the idea of the district running things at that point?
Can I just interrupt here? Because I had a long discussion the other day with a former town administrator from one of the three towns in the district. And apparently, the district was formed by the three towns getting together and all three town meetings voting to create this district. And so presumably, it's not just Carver that would have to vote at their town meeting, it would be all three. So
That's correct, Sarah, all three would have to.
right, and so Marion can't just decide they're out. We have to decide that Marion's out also, and as well as Wareham.
So
But
you're
No,
saying
no,
Marion
actually,
couldn't get out on their
Marion
own?
Here's my question.
Okay.
I would like to see the actual original town meeting votes for all three towns. And it was 1973, because I don't know how, but how the vote, not just how the vote went, but the content of the warrant article. I'd also like to see copies of the original agreement, because if it doesn't specify how we disband this district, that's one thing, but if it specifies precisely how to disband it, which I suspect it does, but I don't know, because I don't.
But has the committee not been looking at those documents?
Yes, the committee's been looking at those, and Bob, let me just help clarify here, because they've been doing this, Sarah, and two things. One is that the enabling documents do allow for a town to leave. We talked about that tonight. It takes a town 2 votes to do it, and they can, 1, begin the negotiations, and 2, final leave. Okay? That can be done. That's in the enabling legislation. What's not in the enabling legislation is how the district would dissolve, which is why Bob's recommending that you can't dissolve the district unless you do a home rule petition to the legislature. So with that, if all 3 towns were in agreement to go forward with the skeleton district, they would then bring that back to each one of the individual town meetings this spring to vote on that. And it would take all 3 towns to agree on that common language.
Yeah, see, I'm just not comfortable making a decision tonight without actually seeing the original agreement.
Okay.
And what it says in it, and I don't, in my opinion, once we gave that authority to the town meetings, we can't just vote to get rid of the district. It's not really
Well,
up to
no,
us.
I think Michael
No.
just said that we might vote that that's our recommendation, but it would have to go to town meeting to get confirmed by all 3 towns to become.
Bob's looking for some
I'd like to
direction.
see the original agreement, though,
Right.
because I'm not going to vote on, I mean, I don't know what it says, so.
Okay,
yeah.
so I'll be happy to give those to you, Sarah, no
Bob.
problem.
Appreciate it.
All right, the problem is, and I think we're in agreement with this, Michael, believe it or not, is that these were poorly written. These agreements that were done way back then were poorly written. And when you start something like this, and my opinion is that if it's something new, you're gonna make mistakes in formulating it. And that's what happened. Mistakes were made, and we're trying to fix it as a district right now by creating these documents that actually we have a separate committee doing that. This is how you're gonna withdraw, this is how things are gonna be split up amongst the different towns, all right? We're gonna do that. There was some language in there with percentages of how much each town has to pay out, okay? But it's not good enough. It's not spelled out enough, and that's why we have a separate committee working on that, and hopefully we'll have some documents within the next couple of
Are
months.
we going to get any guidance from the refuse district itself, the executive director we had in here? Is the district itself going to arrive at an opinion as to what the 3 towns should do that you could then share with us? This is what not that we have to do what they tell us to do, but are they trying to work towards a consensus of what their recommendations to the 3 towns are?
Well, that's why I'm here with this, all right? And the questions that I put out there, I mean, these are things that we as the 3 members in this committee for the district, has to go back there and say, this is what we want. If the town wants to keep, if the selectmen here say, we want the town administrator to go work with Wareham Town Administrator, let's look at a municipal agreement to keep. Can we use the funds that are in our coffers for the district of the two towns, can we use that to buy the property off the district, and then we run it that way? All right, that's a possibility too. There's funds in there. All the equipment that is there, that's a possibility that hopefully that those funds will cover what we need for the district, and then the district, through this skeleton committee, will have some funds there to do what they have to do, because they're getting some money, and then we have some funds to do what we have to do.
So I have a couple more questions for
Okay.
you, Bob. When CMAS came on in 1993, did the agreement change with the district?
There's a separate agreement for that.
And how about when Covanta came on?
They just took over, as far as I know.
There's no new agreement?
They just assumed the
They just assumed the
contract that was in
contract. So far as I know, yeah. Correct?
So,
There was a side agreement with Carver that was done by the former health agent, where there was some additional fees that were paid to that office, but that was just between Carver and Covanta. It has nothing to do with the long-term
Yeah.
durability of the entity.
so could we also see the agreement, how it changed when CMAS came on? I'm just curious. I mean, I don't want us doing something that violates some agreement that we don't know about.
Well, that's the one that's coming to an
That's-
end in 2020, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
That's the one that's given us the inexpensive disposals at this point.
Yeah.
I agree. I think I'd like to see some of this paperwork before we take a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just listening to Bob, and I want to thank you for all this information, for completely boggling my mind. But when you start throwing around, well, hopefully we have the money for this, money for that, and I really would like, and I don't know if the board needs to take a vote on this, to get on for your agenda to have money set aside for your OPED liability so it does not eventually come back and haunt the three towns, because if you don't take care of it, if you got the money there now, it's best to put it aside so it doesn't come back to bite us later.
And that's where, if we go through the municipal agreement or through the skeleton committee would be in charge of all that. So if the money is transferred from hand to hand for it, that there is money through the skeleton committee, they'll be running it. That's the goal.
That, to me, doesn't give me a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings. To me, it's, with what you've got there with the three towns, we have X amount of dollars. We need to put X amount of dollars into the OPED liability to go ahead and offset any future cost on that. That's just my opinion. I don't know if we would need to have a vote by the board, or...
The district can fully fund the pension piece and get a number from that and pay that bill. That's out of the way.
Do we, I mean, have the actuaries gotten involved to figure out that out of the $800,000 or $900,000 you have, $300,000 needs to be set aside for that purpose?
Well, see, there's some differences of figures. One figure came back, I want to say it was like $300 and something thousand. And then, but they had they had more people than what we thought we had. So there's some issues with those figures that they put out there, and that was from Plymouth.
Right.
Retirement.
But there's enough money to cover
But
it.
there is enough money. If
Right, but how
the
much would be
district had.
left over as seed money if we wanted to go in a different direction, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, that's something that we haven't come to find out what the money will be there and how much will be stayed.
Sounds like we
Save
don't
for it.
know what we don't know.
And that's the
And
issue.
it's
but
understandable.
the only-
I don't mean that as a slam. It's just a fact.
And it's tough because, I mean, when you start talking money and figures, we have money available, okay? We hopefully will figure out something before the end of the year, next year. What it is, I don't know, but I think that the three members need a direction from the selectmen here of where we want to go. And, I mean, I will get all this information to you guys this week.
Can we get get an agenda item, though, of setting aside money for OPED while we're still trying to figure all this other stuff out?
We have another meeting coming up at the end of the middle of the month. I forget the date of
Yep.
it. But it's at the fire station that we're going to have one here. Our next
Should we
meeting.
put this as an agenda for the first meeting in January? Would that make sense? Do you need something before then, or?
I would put it on our next meeting.
Our
in 2
next
weeks.
agenda, yeah, like I said, I wanted people to understand that.
Yeah.
Just if you think you can provide some of the additional information that we're looking for by then, that's fine.
December 18th is our next district meeting at 5 o'clock at the fire department.
We meet on the 17th.
Okay, so, and we meet on the 17th. So,
So
what
we would
I'll-
have to put it
what
up
I'll-
till January.
I'll ask I don't know, do you want Jeff, our administrator, to come in on the 17th? All right, and kind of go through the documents with you guys that I
probably would
provide
be a
with
good
you?
idea.
And
Yeah,
see if he's
even if we
available.
couldn't take a vote, then if we get some additional information, it'll help.
'Cause,
And in the meantime, if you can get some of
Can I
the original
just
documentation.
suggest, okay, we have legal counsel, and to review these documents, you know, they're-
Our personal legal counsel?
yes, we have KMP, who has reviewed the documents as it related to the litigation that we brought against some individuals. So they are familiar with the documents. In addition to that, Marion uses the same attorney as we do. So there's the opportunity of jointly reviewing the documents. Mr. Chairman, you had asked what the district is recommending. And the district is trying to work its way through this, but I think Bob would agree is, what he recommended tonight is that the best solution is, given the Marion vote, and hopefully Carver will take the same vote, is actually for the district to go down to the skeleton crew. And based upon the review, because we've had a lot of legal work done on the documents, I think I've clarified what they are, and again, I understand you want to review them, but the original documents did not have the ability for the district to disband. However, the district could take a vote at their next meeting and ask the state legislature, through a home rule petition, through the district, to disband the district forum. They don't have to come back to the towns for that. That's something they could do. But that's their only mechanism to do that unless they go through all three towns. But the reducing it down to the skeleton crew keeps everything functional to solve its ongoing obligations. It doesn't provide an opportunity for future trash hauling. And that's where we get into Marion, is that Marion, even if they want to keep their own facility gone, they have curbside pickup that they did a tax override to pay for. 2 of them they're going to be doing. They did one and they're going to do a second one. So they actually had an override, an operational override. One's done and the second one's coming, in order for them to have curbside pickup. So they are never going to have a large volume of people using that just from Marion residents because of that. So that kind of changes the numbers again, and I'm starting to get into the numbers again. But my point being is, before we get into the numbers, Bob's looking for a little bit of direction that says, okay, it seems like having a skeleton crew, which he has down here, is probably the best way to go to at least move that discussion along.
I guess
Is
my
that
concern
fair,
would
Bob?
be, though, if we were to vote that, is that removing any alternatives from us down the road?
No, because the other half of this is the municipal agreement. The municipal agreement doesn't have to go to the state legislature. It's something between Carver and Wareham, and if we go to Rochester and ask Rochester to join in, or ask Covanta to pay for Rochester, wherever this goes, all right, is that we at least have something there available. And my suggestion to go to a municipal agreement with Wareham, and to do a 2-year agreement with them, it gives us 2 years to figure out, okay, if it's not saving money, if it's costing the town money, we need to get out of it. Because I totally agree with Ron with the North Carver Water District. Okay, that was wrong, and it cost us money, and it's costing us money. This at least has an end date. We have an end date if it's not. And the district, it will allow them the opportunity to go ahead, or district, if we went to a municipal agreement, is that we could look to save money by either going to a bag system, a weight system, who knows, but I think the bag system is probably where it'll end up going, like a lot of other towns do, for this, to save money for the district of the municipal agreement of the 3 towns. That's my way of thinking to see it. If it doesn't work, it's a couple of years, and we're done and over with.
Well, but even then, if we voted to go to the skeleton district, we're not committing to that necessarily. All you're saying is that by going to the skeleton district, that option is still there as another solution, or we just get out completely. So it's not inhibiting whether we move forward or get out completely.
Right, it's not inhibiting anything. It's just we're under the gun time frame. We really are. And I'm not 100% familiar with how municipal agreements work, and I'm sure Michael can talk about that. But
Answer your question, Mr. Chairman, yes, it's not precluding us from doing an intermunicipal agreement. Again, the problem with discussing an intermunicipal agreement at this time is we don't have numbers. And, trying
No,
for 1
I
year,
get
2
that,
years and
but
everything.
if-
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, the skeleton crew would help the three towns just kind of focus on dealing with the organization of the district, closing that out, while it allows potentially Wareham to go off on its own, or Wareham and Carver to potentially work out an intermunicipal agreement, and maybe add another town or two into that. But it's going to have to be different than the structure right now, because the current structure right now, with Marion having tax overrides to pay for curbside pickup, is not going to function in the current setup now.
But they're prepared.
Correct.
This is the problem here, is that Marion's prepared to do something.
They've already done
Wareham's
something.
prepared to do something too. Carver's prepared
Well,
to
you
do
say that, though,
nothing.
but have the residents of Marion, the residents of Marion have spoken because they voted for this. Residents of Wareham have not necessarily,
Where-
I thought it had.
They had Marion had one vote.
Well, Marion,
Wareham hasn't done any votes as of yet,
nor has the selectmen in Wareham taken any votes,
nor the selectmen have taken any votes either.
The only one that's made decisions is Marion has taken 2 decisions. One is they've done a tax override to do curbside pickup that they're now privatizing. They did do it internally, now they're privatizing it. The second vote they did is what I said before, giving themselves the option to do a workout with the district.
So what
Mr.
I mean is
Chairman?
financially, Marion knows what their alternative is. They've gone with an override. They're doing curbside trash pickup. That's how they're handling it. You say Wareham is like in on, all in, but the residents there haven't voted to expend money as of this
No,
point
they
in
haven't
time.
spent any, no one said.
And they don't really
and
know
we're-
what their
I'm
cost
starting
would
the-
be.
I'm starting the conversation for the district, all right, because I think we don't have any skin in any game. We have no preparation at all for waste in our town, except for curbside pickup for private haulers. That's it.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, but really, that's all Wareham has at this point in time.
Not necessarily, because they have land available.
But they'd have to
Yeah.
Today,
spend
that's
money.
all they have available. Today, that's all they have available.
They have land available.
But again, they're in the same boat we are in terms of trying to figure out what's it gonna cost.
I think they're in a better financial position than we are.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
May I recommend that to give Bob some direction and to at least get a placeholder in, that we go ahead and we recommend going to the skeleton staff, that them to work towards that. Also to get on the agenda to go ahead and fund your OPED liability now as opposed to later. And that way, that gives us some time to look at all the documentation coming in and gives us some leeway and more importantly, the time, because there's no way, I don't think any of us can give a real concise vote and know exactly what the heck we're voting on.
Do you need an actual vote of support about going to a skeleton committee, or simply a consensus to take back that the board is supportive of a skeleton committee?
Either way, any direction's better than nothing, to be totally honest. I want Carver, because I want Carver to lead, have some type of lead in this. I want us to have some type of skin in the game, okay? I'm looking out for 1,900 residents that pick up a sticker, all right?
Again, we have a debate as to whether it's 1,900 or 900 people that actually take their waste down there.
Immaterial, he wants some guidance.
I know.
Bob, are you comfortable with Alan's 2 statements?
I do. I'm comfortable with it. I mean,
So that,
like I said,
let's just try to peel the onion back. We got 2 statements that here. Bob's comfortable with them. Can we move those 2 forward? Because it looks like that's the only consensus we're going to have tonight.
Do you want to make a motion to that effect?
I make a motion that we go ahead and that we
Support the idea.
support Bob going forward back to the district to go to a skeleton crew, and also Bob working with the chairman and vice chair to get on their next agenda, a motion to go ahead and fund your OPED liability.
I second
And
that.
pension.
Further discussion? None? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then for our next agenda, we'd like to ask the executive director to come in for some additional conversation.
I'm going to abstain from that because I just don't feel I have enough information,
Okay.
even though you have given us a ton of information, Bob. I appreciate it.
And
I
Bob. It's
understand.
good
and
information.
It's tough. This is a tough situation that where our town is in right now, and We have to do something.
Yeah, I appreciate all the info, Bob, and I didn't feel comfortable not giving you at least some direction.
That's fine, that's fine.
And then I only have one other point to make, which is it's not OPED, it's OPEB. Other post-employment benefits. Some reason everyone says OPED, so.
Okay, thanks,
just-
Martha Stewart.
Well, I'm just saying. All right, next item, back to Bob, Wade Street deed.
All right, so,
And we have it included in our packet.
right, so the town of Carver gave the deed, property rights to Wade Street to the redevelopment for sale. There was an agreement, and the redevelopment authority, and I was on a subcommittee for that, tried to look at different options for that property. We really couldn't come into a full agreement about, and it was me and Joanna Layton, the subcommittee, and we brought it back to the board, and we couldn't decide on what we wanted to do with it, how we were going to do it. So therefore, we put it back, came back to this meeting room, and we told the Board of Selectmen here at the time that we don't want it. You guys can have this property back and do what you want, and the selectmen here voted for it. But the deed never got put in for the town to take it back over.
Nobody
So the-
nobody went to the registry to record the change?
So it's still with the redevelopment authority.
But the redevelopment authority actually voted and informed the board that they were turning it over, took a vote to turn it over to the Board of Selectmen, presented that to the Board of Selectmen, who I presumably accepted it. But then nobody ever remembered to go over to the Registry of Deeds to record the change.
Correct. And Dick Ward, who I think was sitting actually here, at the time actually said that that's an important property. We need to keep it.
Bob, is that what was designated the recreation area that used to be part of, it's at the end of the cul-de-sac?
Correct, correct. So I want to see the town actually go forward and go to the Registry of Deeds and actually put that back under the town's auspice and not the redevelopment authority's auspice.
Well, basically, just to execute the
Exactly.
prior vote. Because
Right.
it doesn't need to be re-voted, it was already voted.
Correct.
We just need to find the minutes to confirm that, just for legal purposes.
Correct.
Because that needs to be attached when you go back to certify
Correct.
the registry of deeds.
So Bob, is this, would it have the same, would the language be the same with the same purpose, that it could only be used to build residential?
No, it was a recreational property only,
Originally, yeah.
originally. All right, how and if it was going to change, we don't know.
But I thought the deed read that the highest and best use was the residential use.
There's a problem with access. There's only 25-foot access getting back there. That's the issue. When the property on South Meadow Road, the development that was being put in there, I went to a planning board meeting and I actually asked them, not as a selectman, as a resident, that they provide us with another 25-foot easement to get back into that property, giving us a secondary opportunity to go in and out. They said they'd take it under advisement. I guess they came to the redevelopment authority and they're looking at possibly selling it to them, but there's some issues with one of the abutters
Are we talking about Wade Street?
on Wade Street.
Okay. So, yeah, because I know this parcel has been an issue way back when our former town administrator was here. I mean, the residents were concerned. Do they still want it to be a recreational lot?
I haven't talked to any of the residents since I was on the redevelopment authority, and it's always been a recreational spot. It was supposed to be. Work has been done to clean it up.
I think there's been some infringement on the property as well.
There are some infringements.
But I don't want to get into that.
Right, me neither.
But I guess my question would be, once it comes back, once we go to the Registry of Deeds, certify that it should be under the care of the Board of Selectmen as opposed to the RDA, what are your thoughts to do with, do you have any idea of what to do with the property, or you just want to make sure it's secured to the board?
I'd like to secure it to the board. I'm not sure if I want to go a conservation restriction, my own, because we may need that for a water property. I mean, the front area where there's a depression, we know that there was stump there, and that's common knowledge. The neighbors had made comments that there was sewage dumped there. All these different things, but there's no proof. But the proof we do know, there's a stump stack there from everyone who lives in that
So
area.
for our purposes tonight, what you're looking for is that the board instructs the office to move forward and make sure that we execute what had been previously voted by the RDA and accepted by the Board of Selectmen and get it over to the Registry of Deeds and recorded so that it's now owned by the Board of Selectmen as opposed to the RDA.
Yes.
That's
and
essentially what we want to accomplish
Yes, yes. And then, like in the future, to figure out what the usage of that property will be in the future, who knows? But I think we need to protect that property in that little area.
And do we know the date of that meeting?
I don't have it with me right now.
All right, if you could supply that to the office. Do we need a vote to that effect, or can we just ask the office to go ahead and execute that? And I will offer my wife's services, since she's a real estate title examiner, to get that over.
Yeah, just in hindsight, how this whole thing transpired, the title should have never been transferred to the redevelopment authority. The memorandum of agreement was all they needed to work on developing the site. I did speak to the chairman of the redevelopment authority last week, and he informed me that the redevelopment authority has no interest in redeveloping that property. I think there was some discussion on the property next door on Plymouth Street. That is not the case. They have no desire to do that. As far as they're concerned, they gave it up years ago, and that's where it is. And this is just a process issue that we're spending 10 minutes discussing.
Okay, just want to be clear. Alan?
And I was just going over the MOU as it currently stands. There is no expiration date on that.
No.
No, it just says either party can go ahead and modify it any time.
But if it transfers over to the board, then that would.
Then that would render it moot.
Memorandum is moot at that point.
But they already
Okay.
voted, the redevelopment authority
Yeah.
voted to do it, so they've, in
Right,
essence,
all right, so we'll follow through and get that taken care of.
Thank you.
Next item, 2020 license renewals. These are everything we've been signing in there for the last month and a half. And normally, when we vote to approve these, we always add a proviso that they are in good standing with all taxes and whatever taken care of. So that, does somebody want to make a motion to approve these renewals subject to?
Make a motion that we approve the renewals subject to all taxes being paid.
I'll
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
On the list we have, is there any update on any of those? Because we have several, especially under the CVs, people who have not paid yet. Do we have any new updates on any of where those stand?
Right, and they would not be subject to our approval if they're not paid.
Right. No, I'm just,
Yeah, not just taxes.
just
but
kinda
fees
curious.
as well, yeah.
When do they have to pay by? Is there a pay-by date?
I think it's already passed, but I don't know.
So are there penalties that accrue if they don't pay by the pay-by date?
On taxes, yeah.
Michael,
I would,
on voting the
Taxes are-
2020 license renewals, if someone has not paid their back fees or taxes, when was that due? When were payments due, do you know?
They also have the ability of negotiating or getting into a payment plan with the town treasurer, the town treasurer.
What
But-
about for the licenses? Because
License,
we have
same.
several that have not paid for their license yet.
So it's not just a tax issue. If they haven't paid for their licenses, they would.
Well, they don't pay for the license, they don't get the receipt. I mean, they have to pay for the license fee in order to get the license. I thought you were talking taxes.
Well-
Taxes could be under agreement.
My question was about the actual license.
Yeah, I mean, they need to pay for the license to pick up their.
So the
Mine-
motion would include fees and taxes.
Right, mine would be on taxes. I mean, is that the reason why they're highlighted on this sheet
No, that's
here?
because they haven't paid their fees, the
Their
fees
fees
for the
for it?
license.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
no.
Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. The ABCC approval of seasonal population.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question. So the 2010 census said we had 11,509. What happened to the 9? We haven't done a new
They
census.
moved out.
I don't know if it's going to make any difference.
I can't answer that question.
So where did we get this number of 11,500?
Well, this document doesn't reference the census.
I understand, but
It's as of July 10th, 2020, so the state has its own estimates that it does through the Miser organization, which is a part of the UMass Donahue Institute.
So that's where that number
I'm
comes from?
assuming, yeah.
Well,
So it's not
Different
intended to be a
numbers.
hard, specific number, it's intended to be almost like an
The state
estimate?
updates the thing every year as to what their algorithms say it should be. So I don't know where the 9 people are, but that's what the state thinks we have now.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Actually, it says as of July 10th, 2020, so it's an estimation
Right.
of how many people. So, I move we approve.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Further discussion?
I just, what is this really for?
It's for liquor licenses, it's.
Just for the liquor
Every year we do
license?
it, yes, it's.
So-
It helps
It's
determine
a
how
state
many liquor
requirement.
licenses we can award within our
Okay.
township.
Do we have any, does this allow us more?
No,
No.
So what we have is what we got.
I guess,
Yep.
Okay.
If there's no further discussion, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? KP Law hourly rate change from 185 to 195 an hour. Michael, do you know when the last rate change was?
I think we did one about 18 months ago, maybe 12 months ago, but prior to that, it was several years.
And what was it, what's the increase from?
185 to 195?
So it's only going up $10 an hour.
Yes. Compared to,
Is this something we need a vote on?
yes, because the board, yes, you have to vote on that as the new number.
I approve, I make a motion, we approve the KP Law hourly rate change up to $195 per hour.
Further discussion?
I'd like to know what the prevailing rate is. I mean, is this a lot more than other communities are paying? Is it relatively the same? Is it,
I would
Less.
argue that you're going to see numbers in the $300 range for other communities.
but I don't know that.
Well, that, I'm telling you, you asked, I told you. And if you want to do your own, that's what it would be.
No, I'd like to see some comparable numbers before we vote for this.
Yes.
I'd like to know, when was the last time that we had a review to, do we want to keep the town council as it is, or we go ahead and research another town council to come in? When was the last time the agreement that we had to renew was?
It was a while back.
I want to say it's probably 5, 6 years ago.
It was before I came on the board.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think every 5 years, we should be reviewing contracts, any contract that we really have.
Well, that's sort of independent of whether we vote for this.
I
though.
understand that, I just want to put it out there that, I mean,
For a future agenda item?
future agenda item, we need to research other
I think that's a good idea.
opportunities,
Yeah.
and see what's out there, but,
I'd be in support of that as well.
Yeah, but part of it would have, I would say that part of it would have to be kind of a report from KMP, what they've done, what their success rate is, you know, how many have they won for us, how many have they lost for us, the whole thing. But that being not part of this discussion of 195, and we've got a,
All right, Alan made a motion to approve. Was there a
Mark
second?
seconded.
Seconded.
Further discussion?
Well, I guess my question will be, what happens if we don't approve it? And we have contract with KP, we don't approve the rate increase, what
Michael,
happens?
do you have any
what
idea what
happened?
happens if we don't approve the rate increase?
I have no idea.
At least that's honest, I like that.
Motion made and seconded to increase from 185 to 195. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
no.
Passes 3-2.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a move that we have at least a 5-minute break, because I sat through this yesterday, and I know we ain't gonna get done by 8:55.
Oh, I'm going to be quick.
Yeah, right.
5-minute break.
Thank you.
We are back in session. We will now go to the town administrator update. First bullet point is the police station contract awarded in the amount of $7 million for only construction of base building and project budget.
Yes. We received bids 2 weeks ago for the police station contract. I'm going to be executing, probably this week, a contract for $6.96 million for the base building. That's just for construction of the building. We do have a holdback in there for our fire suppression system because we are going to redesign that. And that number does also not include the $300,000 add alt to construct an outbuilding. So where we stand with the entire facility is that right now we're looking at the design, permitting, geotech, commissioning, builder's risk, utility transfers is about $850,000. The base building is about $7 million. Alternate number one is about $300,000 to build the outbuilding, and the integrated technology, security systems, and furniture, fixture, and equipment is $750,000. So we're looking at about $8.9 million is what we're now estimating the building within the footprint to cost and to have that fully functional. In addition to that, we have a $400,000 project contingency that our goal is not to use, but we're going to be budgeting that in the project as well. From the standpoint of off-site public safety improvements that need to be done tied into this project, we're looking at about $200,000 to reconfigure the intersection, rated 58, and change the island around. We have site improvements at the town hall complex that includes demolition of the old police station at $250,000. We're budgeting $260,000 for a town-wide cistern, which would be an offset to the fire suppression system to allow us to address future needs of the town hall complex. And then finally, phase 1A and 2 of the town-wide radio system is about $675,000. Those would be off-site public safety improvements for about $1.385 million. So that's kind of where we stand on the police station at this point. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, does it, this demolition of the old police station, is that police station / old fire station, or just a police station with the old fire station remaining intact?
So when that number was estimated a while back, that was just for the police station and leaving the front building standing as is until a better use can be determined as to what to do with that.
And that's still yet to be determined?
Still yet to be determined. Right now, the only use for that facility is for storage of vehicles. Any questions on the police station?
One quick question on the cistern. What facilities will tie into that cistern?
So what that cistern is going to do is it's going to do several things. One is, when you remember when the fire department came in and talked about the insurance components, that'll add additional capacity that it needs to continue to lower its rate to get us down to a 1. What it's going to be able to serve, it'll be hardwired into the police station, it's hard piped into the police station. From there, what we'll be doing is having an outlet off the back of the lot that would allow for the fire department to connect with hoses to the senior complex behind us, to the library.
So the hydrants that are back there now will be functional?
Not the hydrants, because those are actually determined not to be fully functional.
Okay.
But from hoses, they would be able to have water outlet through this to be able to pump anywhere.
Okay.
They would hook a engine up right to the cistern and do a reverse lay to either Meadowbrook, Town Hall, Library, whatever they needed, and to go ahead and, because it's easy for them to do up to a 1,000-foot lay.
Yep.
So I have a question. Does that, this whole $1 million for it, does that include the furniture and all the upgrades inside too? Because you said the outside is this.
So the first set of
cost.
numbers that I gave you that came out to $8.9 million, that did include the furniture. That's call it inside the fence.
Okay.
So that does include integrated technology, security systems, furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
For the 600,000 plus.
And that's 750 for those items right there.
650.
Now, this cost is all under the levy limit, correct?
So
Or no?
when this went to town meeting, and you go back and look at the statements that were done, we were going to borrow $6 million. Town meeting authorized us to borrow a maximum of $6 million. any additional funds for the project to do the furniture fit out and equipment, to do some of these other things would come from one-time money. That one-time money can be free cash, that one-time money can be capital outlay money. But there would be no additional money coming from borrowing. And to finally answer your question, the answer is yes, everything in this is within the levy limit. We are not looking to do any debt exclusions, nor do we need to.
As in 490K for, on the capital plan.
Correct.
Bless you.
Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions on the police station? Hearing none, moving on to the next item is the capital budget. I'm going to go over the slide presentation that I gave to the Finance Committee. I'm going to skip slides and come back to it. In your packet, you'll see the capital outlay plan. This is the top half of the document. This is the second half of the document. I did learn to use the magnifying glass last night, so I'm going to do that, and everybody was laughing.
And he was darn
tools
proud
that I
of
was
that,
doing.
too.
Yeah, and top it off, I even have a little laser pointer that I can do just to really get into what I want to focus on. Anyway, this is the capital plan. This was worked out with all the different departments. It lays out the different items. In the essence of time, I'm not going to go through those tonight. But everything in green is what's going to be on the warrant for funding this year, whether it comes out of the Capital Outlay Committee or some other funding sources. That's what the green items are, and this was also taken to the Capital Outlay Committee and voted unanimously by the Capital Outlay Committee to move forward with our Capital Outlay plan. Any questions with capital outlay, capital budget?
For a capital outlay, don't they have like $300,000 or something? No, that's wrong, that was the other one. 800,000 in
For
there
what?
for capital outlay, that, in their budget? Or what they have available to them?
So if we're looking, if you're asking about the police station,
No, capital outlay
The capital
committee, we
outlay,
always
they
have
have their
them
own
in reserve
account
fund.
of how much
No,
they have?
that was the old days.
Okay.
They don't have, there's not, it's just all part of the infrastructure now.
yeah, we have a reserve fund that they can use to fund things, which they have done.
The stabilization fund?
The stabilization
Like
fund.
3
well,
million, 3 million in that one?
No.
No, wrong number. There is no 3 million stabilization fund in capital outlay.
All right. I got an update, we all got an update, and I was looking at the numbers there from that update, and
Yes.
that figure was in there for a designated stabilization fund.
Well, that's different, Bob. That's a
Okay.
stabilization fund, that's not capital. In the town stabilization fund, if you go back to your financial policies, in there we have, I think it's 7.2% of our revenue into a stabilization fund,
Correct.
which is $3 million. That's stabilization.
Right.
That is following the financial policy, it's nothing to do with capital.
But we're using that to help fund
No.
some of these, correct?
No. Different fund,
That's just the rainy day fund, essentially.
correct.
The 3 million stable.
Capital debt stabilization? All right. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, one question on the 675K for the replaced townwide radio system infrastructure. I noticed we had a year break and then we go another 575,000. Will that complete everything that was presented to this board by the emergency services?
That's the same schedule we were talking about with the board. They're gonna need 18 months to 24 months to implement the first
Okay.
3 phases that are in there.
Thank you.
Again, when you're dealing with the capital piece, that is focused on, the green is what we have for this year coming up. Everything else to that is a forecast. We reset every year, and some things move up or down based upon that. Bob, I know what you're talking about. I'm going to come back to it because you were
Okay.
talking about something different, but I'm
All
going
right.
to come back to that and answer your question. I see what you're looking at. So anyway, so that is our capital budget plan. All right, now let me go back to this is our 10-year forecast. Tied into the 10-year forecast, I'm not going to go over all the assumptions right now. It'll take too long. We also have in here our free cash that we're looking at. Right now, we're looking at $1.355 million. Here's where $675,000 is coming out for the replacement of the townwide radio system that's on the screen up here. $262,000 for the town hall Fire suppression piece, $50,000 for the emergency radio, $100,000 for the town and school special education reserve fund, $45,000 for the townwide operation and maintenance, $22,500 for the recreation committee to support their programs. And this year for the North Carver Water District, it's down to $200,000. In the past, we've been doing $250,000. They did have surplus funds last year, and we, have other priorities, and they were able to work their budget with $200,000 this year. So we're beginning to draw that number down. The next slide is where I want to focus on. This is, in essence, what we have for our tax levy for the town. Tied into here, from last year, we had $25.9 million. Then you add 2.5% on that. Our new growth is estimated $253,000. And even though the board has approved about $1 million in additional solar pilot agreements, because the time it takes to build those and you don't get paid until they actually flip the switch for them to come online, we're estimating that $529,000 is going to come on this year as part of that payment. That brings us down to $27 million that's part of tax levy and or solar agreements. On top of that, the town did approve a debt exclusion. Originally it was $1.19 million. Due to the efforts of the board, it was reduced down by $100,000 through another solar project. So in essence, those two numbers are what's raised through tax levy. $1 million of that is through the override, the debt exclusion, and the other is for the tax pieces. From there, moving down the screen, we've got $12 million for our state aid cherry sheet. That has been level funded. Our local receipts are $2.6 million. Our meals tax is $127,000, which brings in an additional $15.2 million in other revenue. I think what's important to keep in mind here is that, again, our state aid is $12.5 million of our $43 million that we have for our revenue.
Just a quick question. There has been a lot of hoopla about the legislature passing the educational reform. My understanding was, though, that based on our particular circumstances, that's actually, although I thought I did see something on circuit breaker, where we might get some assist on the circuit breaker side. Are we still waiting to see how that's going to play out?
We do not expect any significant net change for the town of Carver. And the best way to sum it up is, I'm going to use round numbers. The state has $1 billion to spend on education, okay? And then with it, they have all these formulas to slice and dice how the number's done, okay? They still have $1 billion. Then they come and do some education reform, and they slice and dice those formulas, and they move some money in this bucket, some money in that bucket, and they take some money out of that bucket. It still comes out to $1 billion. So they haven't increased significantly the net dollar amount that goes in there. So some districts make out, some districts don't. As we've heard from Brad Brothers and the school administration, is Carver is protected because of our low student enrollment compared to when we had a higher piece. So we're held harmless. So we don't really see any benefit from any of that.
I was hopeful.
Yep. So again, $43.7 million is the revenue that we use to run the town. From there, we then get into the cherry sheet, the clawbacks that they have is, even though they give us $12.5 million, at the same time they take back about $1.6 million back. Just what they do. So that's the clawbacks that we have in there. We have our overlay account and our Southeast Regional School District numbers. In addition to that, we then move forward with our transfer to capital and debt stabilization. So Bob, this is the number you were talking about here, is the combination of the $3.3 million plus the $176. Now let me talk about that again. On the top of the page, you saw that we had $529,000 in solar projects. Based upon the financial policies, we break that into three buckets. One bucket, a third of it, $176,000, goes to defer capital and debt stabilization, which means there's less operating money we're putting into capital and debt stabilization, which means that moves $176,000 into the operating budget. But the other two items go into a stabilization fund, which is for the middle high school reconstruction fund, and then also unfunded liabilities, which includes pension and OPEB that's there. The OPEB, got that down. So that's where those three numbers that we have in there. So Bob, when you're looking at the $3.3 million plus the 176, that in essence is what is in the capital debt stabilization fund that town meeting transfers into this. What we did have available this year is through savings of other projects, we had an additional $490,000 that we have saved in that fund for projects coming in under budget. So that was added to this year to fund the furniture, fit out, and equipment in the police station, where we have been putting that money aside. So that's why you have a number that's a little bit bigger than the $3.5 million, which is what it should, normally be. And if you look next year, it'll be $3.6 million in the capital and debt stabilization fund moving forward.
And the capital debt stabilization fund is the fund that's unique to Carver. A lot of the communities around us don't do it, which is what's allowing us to do all this infrastructure without having to add to people's taxes. It's keeping us under the tax levy.
That is correct. From there, we have money going into the North Carver Water District through the District Improvement Financing, which is $133,000, $25,000 to the Compensated Absentee Fund, and an additional $50,000 per year, which is what we do to the OPEB trust fund. So we're adding $300,000 to that for this year. So these are transfers, again, that come out of our revenue. Moving down the slide, we have here town meeting articles, $25,000 for the Finance Committee to give the grants that they give out. If there are any special articles that come out of town meeting, we may have to have another town meeting to fund those, or it's going to, because it would have to come out of some of the staff budgets and operating budgets, because this is what we have available is $25,000 for articles. And again, that is programmed for the following the same process we did last year, so that the Finance Committee can give that $25,000 out in grants. We have the reserve fund, $125,000. We have Old Colony VOTEC, which we take the previous year's actual number, and then we add 5% to that. So we're looking at $1.28 million. That 5% is generally bigger than what local districts do, but that's what these VOTECs end up charging. The only thing I'll bring out to this is sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. And what I mean by that is this is all based upon what our current enrollment is. If all of a sudden 2 students add to it, then that number is going to go up by another $100,000. We've had that case in years where we had to solve that. In other years, we haven't had that issue. But again, that's an issue that I just always emphasize is this is our best guess from estimated budgeting, but we don't know who's going to enroll and who's not. It's usually consistent, but sometimes it can change by 1 or 2 students. Here's our elementary school debt, the $100,000. I'm sorry, for the debt exclusion. Snow and ice, we now have a budget of about $313,000, and that adds 10% per year. When I first got to the town, we had a 5-digit number. I think it was like $45,000, $50,000. Meg and I, over the last 6 years, have built that up to about $313,000 now. Generally, our winter account is somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 that we end up spending. It is the only account we can use a deficit funding for it. Having said that, last winter was the first winter ever that either one of us ever experienced where, because there was no snow and little icing, that we actually ended up staying within budget, which never happens with snow and ice.
And if we do go over, isn't that money removed from the following year's cherry sheet?
Or we have to supplement it. Normally what I would do is I would come in and put in free cash to supplement that at a future town meeting so that we aren't paying, so we're not impacting future revenue with old expenses. And the DPW do a great job. I mean, they're out there in the end of October every year getting all their equipment ready for the winter season. So, they're ready 2 months in advance for what needs to happen. So you subtract the $9 million plus the other numbers I went through, this brings us down to $34.77 million. That's the available revenue to be split between the town and the school, or a total of $867,000. This year, that has come up to 2.56%. Last year was 2.44%, so we did have a little extra money this year, and that gets split at the ratio that this Board of Selectmen the Select Board and the school committee voted at these new numbers 69.6 and 30.3%. So again, here's where you have, we can tell you right now, the school budget is going to be $24.237 million, and I can tell you here that the town budget is going to be $10.52 million, $542 million this year when we come back at a future meeting and show out the different budgets that are in there per each department. Again, we have our OPED summaries that we have. Back 6 years ago, when we took over the 2011 number, at this year, the town would have had $69 million in liability. Through the efforts that the Board of Selectmen have done, progressively each year in changing healthcare from 75-25 to 50-50 with new hires, and with home rule legislation that the town adopted, that we're now down to a liability of $38 million. Again, we've had a net savings of over $30 million through structural changes that you guys have done to meet the financial objectives of the town and keep everything sustainable. Any questions on the 10-year forecast? Bob?
Under the property tax revenue, where it says elementary excluded debt, 100,000, you have $1,090,000. That money's taken out of there, but then it comes back down here and shared budget totals has the same number.
Yes.
We're not double.
Well, no,
taking out
because
double for this.
Yeah, if I go to this page, if I go to, hold on one second, let me go back to the middle. So this is basically just the top third of the page, top
Right.
quarter of the page. This is revenue.
Right.
Positive.
Yeah.
The middle half of the page is expenses, deficit. The bottom piece is what's left over to go through the town. So if we have revenue coming in here that we've done with the debt exclusion, we have to subtract that out of that revenue to pay off that bond. So that's why that is an equal number coming off of there, so that it does come to the town there. So that's a positive, this is a negative, that's why it comes out to, that gets subtracted there to give us what our net piece is.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on the 10-year forecast? Again, you've been through this, 6 years now, so it's pretty straightforward. I think we've got it down pretty good. Can you say, Meg? Anything else you want to add to it? Sure. Positive. You get your microphone up there. All right. Okay. So again, no questions on either one of those, correct?
Correct.
All right. All right. Moving forward. Also in your packet that I put on your desk is you have the proposed organizational chart for FY21.
Just a quick question on this. You're going to give us like a 30,000-foot view of this, and we will have an opportunity to revisit all this at a future meeting?
That is correct, because this is just giving you an overview, and then when we submit the individual department budgets, then you'll have the department by department.
So this is a recommendation that's being made from the folks that have been working on this reorg.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a recommendation. I mean, this is what we're putting forward as the organizational chart for next year under the bylaws to move things forward, and it's up to town meeting to adopt it or to not adopt it. So with that, what you see here, this is the organizational chart for the town. And I'm going to use my little laser up here. Give me 1 second here. Let's have a little bit of fun. Okay, on the screen, this top piece that you see here is here's our Board of Selectmen, here's the school committee.
Can you use that magnifier for the folks that are in the...
Well, no, it doesn't let me do two things at once. Which is
laser and magnify?
Apparently not.
Yeah, see, I can magnify, but I don't think I can laser on top of that. Oh, wait a minute, maybe nope, see, it goes back to the small screen. So, again, we don't need to read each box. This is in groups, so we're going to talk in groups. Okay, so the top part of the group is the three different elected groups. We've got the school committee, we've got that oversees the superintendent. That's about as far as we get into the organizational structure of the school. There's a school committee, and there's a superintendent, and they do everything else after that. All right, then over here we have a town clerk. She's elected, and then we hire staff for her to run her office, or whoever's there. Then we have the Board of Selectmen, who hires the town administrator. We have the town administrator staff, and then we have the rest of the general government. This section here on the left side, the first three columns, this is public safety. So under public safety, we have fire, police, and EMS and EMA. There are really no changes that are being proposed in this organizational piece. but for the creation of a deputy chief position in the police department. That's the extent of any changes that we have over here. Going over the far side, this branch is our operation and maintenance department that is a town-wide shared service between the school and the town that the superintendent and I jointly oversee. We are not proposing making any structural changes in this area. We will be moving one half-time person up to a full-time. Last year we did hire an extra DPW person, so I think we have 7 people now maintaining the entire town, where before we had 6. And yes, that is 6, and now we have 7, but it's a big town. But that's what we're looking at over here. Then we get into our general government, which in this section is broken down into 3 pieces. Finance, which I'll talk about in detail. Our PEP office, Planning and Environmental and Permitting and Inspections Department. And then over here, this new Community Livings Department, which is a enhancement of the existing services we have now within those branches. Again, I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. This centerpiece here for the PEP office, really no significant changes there. I think we're upgrading one position from a 3 to a 4. So again, nothing major there. All right, now I'm going to go into detail. And this, hopefully, everybody can see on the screen. Okay, so this is the Community Living Department. And before I begin going through this, what I want to emphasize is this has been a process that staff and, if you will, a steering group made up of chairmen or vice chairmen of different committees have been meeting with staff over the last 6 months, plus hiring a consultant to come in here and for us to take a look at this. And this really gets to a point, Sarah, you've brought up before, about communications and about awareness and making sure people understand what's going on. So with that, we've taken that to heart, and we said, okay, people know about the finances, people know about the public safety, people know about the operation and maintenance department. What they don't always know about all the time is what's happening in the COA, what's happening in the veterans, what's happening in the library, what's happening in our recreation department. And really that's what this is designed to do, is to enhance the existing services we have right now and make them better. We are not eliminating any positions in this by doing this. We're actually taking the existing groups and helping to enhance that by having them work more together. And I'll get into that in a second. So at the top of the screen here, what you see is the library trustees, the council on aging, and the recreation committees. They're still there. There's no change there. They're still part of the policy process. Underneath that, when you look at these screens, this one and the next one, if it's something that's highlighted in a darker color, the box around it, there's some type of change there. And I'll emphasize what that change is. Everything else that isn't highlighted in the darker color, there is no change. So what we're looking to do is we have our director, our library and COA director. We are not looking to change that at all. That position's still going to remain there, overseeing those departments and supporting others. This next position is an assistant director of this new community living department that's really going to help the director focus on outreach and awareness and doing weekly newsletters, doing a town-wide calendar of all events and functions and activities. But it's going to enhance the services and help communicate what's happening and make people aware. You know, the other piece that I haven't mentioned in Savory's here is that we did do a town-wide survey of everyone 55 and older, and that's also driving this. What we found out in that process was people weren't aware of some things. Carol's now been able to go out and work on getting a second Gatra bus, or fourth Gatra bus, because more people weren't aware of that. Same thing with Meals on Wheels, same thing with other programs we're offering. So again, part of this, and going back to you, Sarah, is just making people more aware and sharing that information, and that's what we've really been focused on, is to create this opportunity for that to happen. So again, a new position here. I'm going to go to the right side of the screen here. This is the library. We have the library assistant director. We have the children's librarian, head of technical services, library aides, and assistant reference librarian. Nothing is changing in the library. There's no changes here in the library. However, we are taking a half-time position that's in the library, part-time position, that does activities and programs, because the COA also has a person that does activities and programs as a half-time person. Guess what? They're the same person, but they're in two different departments. We're creating, over on this side, this new full-time position that will be doing activities and programs coordinator, which is the same person that was doing it half-time in one department and half-time in the other. And now they're going to be doing it across the whole spectrum. So back to the library, no changes in there, but for that half-time position is now going to go to full-time, but it's going to do library and other things. Veteran services. In here, we have added the word housing into veteran services. You know, when you look at the town and you look at the 55 and older survey and you look at the demographics of the town, if you're 55 and older, you have plenty of options for affordable housing. Plenty. You've got different villages you can go into. However, if you're under 55, you don't have a lot of options. Also, if you're a veteran, you don't have a lot of options, unless you're 55 and older. So really what we're looking to do is, from an affordable housing standpoint in Carver, is to steer affordable housing into veterans. Again, 55 and older, we got plenty of options. But we don't have options for veterans. We don't have options for younger veterans. And that's why, when you see the title here, is we've added veteran services and housing. We want to try to focus more housing for our veterans. Also, that's where there's a lot of federal and other state funding to support housing for veterans. So that's what we're looking to focus on. Moving across the chart, this is our Council on Aging. Now, again, you've seen all this before. We have a transportation coordinator. They're grant funded. They then oversee the GATRA bus drivers. They're grant funded. That's going to remain in place, no change there. We have a outreach social worker, part-time position. It's grant funded. It's not changing at all. We have an assistant cook. We're looking to hire an assistant cook because our assistant cook just became the healthy aging nutrition coordinator, which is the head cook in slash facilities, because Don Padovani retired. And our assistant cook, you know, using a career ladder, was able to apply for the position and was the best candidate. Now, what you're seeing here is, again, still the head cook in facilities. But we've kind of, through discussions with our steering group, again, the chairmans and vice chairmans of these different boards, including the 55 and older survey, we've identified, and what the survey said is, people don't want to be stereotyped by age. Well, I'm 65, so I can do this, or I'm 52 and I can do that. Is people wanted to have more relationships with different age groups, as it talked out for the survey. So this whole concept is to really take away a specific age group. We have different needs, but we want everybody to age healthy. We want healthy aging. Whether you're 6, 12, and we've got childhood obesity issues, whether you're a person who lost a spouse and you're looking for companionship to help age better, whether you need Meals on Wheels, whether you need GATRA. In each one of these age categories, we want to make sure that we can help every one of those age categories age healthy aging. So again, no changes to the Council on Aging. We get over here to this activities and coordination area, activities and programs, is again, I've taken 2 part-time positions, created into a full-time position. We also exist, currently right now, we have our recreation coordinator who's part-time. And then in this bottom box is we want to add more seasonal summer staff to come in and actually help with doing summer programs, whether it's tennis, whether it's doing lifeguarding, whether it's some additional programs and outdoor activities that we may do. This board made a decision 6 years ago, wanted to fight opioids and wanted to fight substance abuse, and part of that was to make sure we were giving kids jobs where they could be productive in the summer and keep them off of those activities. So again, that trend is continuing in here. So this is the new department that there's been a lot of work that's been put into doing it. With that, I want to, I know Carol's over there knitting the hat for me. But I wanted to talk to her and see if she has any additional comments. I then want to go to Dan Badger, who spent a lot of time having hundreds of meetings with different people in the community. I think he's met with every one of you, and probably everybody on TV, and got their thoughts on what needs to be done and what some of the issues are. And I see Savory's here too, and Savory may have a few comments from his 55 and older study that's been done. As we went through this, we also looked at what would it look like in 3, 4, 5 years. So at some point in future years when funding's available and we have money available, we will be looking to expand this department. But this is what we could afford now, and it gives us the foundation to help implement the 55 and older survey, and it enhances the services we provide now, and that's what the real focus is to provide a more healthy and active living for our residents. Carol.
Use the microphone.
Do you want me to come to the table?
Sure. Yeah, Dan, you're right behind her. Savory, you want to share? Come on up.
I mean, from my standpoint, I think Michael pretty much laid out and explained it, but I've also been looking at this for a long time, so I'm sure, looking at it right now, you probably have questions. I think the most important thing to think about is just the fact that we're not trying to change anything, to take anything away. What we're trying to do is do a little bit of, reorganizing to make things work better. And I think the biggest piece of all of that is that I have people say to me on a regular basis, oh, I wish I'd known about that program at the library, or I wish I'd known about that program at the Council on Aging, or, geez, Recreation had a program and you guys had a similar program, and sometimes there's conflicts with those, and we don't always know what the others are doing. So for me, the best part of this is coordinating that so that we're getting the information out to people so that they know about what's going on, and also we're making sure that we're not, repeating the process and doing the same thing in 2 or 3 different areas, but we're keeping it unique, because if we do it once, then that means we can take those other 2 or 3 times that were repetitive and do something different. That's kind of what I would say at this point about it. I think it's great that the library is at the center of this, because I've always considered the library to be sort of the center of the community in terms of a gathering spot, in terms of, communication and all of that. But I think it's just recognizing that the library is an umbrella over all of this, but that these other departments are still, working to do the best they can for the community.
Before Dan talks, I just want to hit one more point. We're not going to be discussing or taking any questions on a senior center or a new facility or anything like that. That's not part of this analysis. What we identified we need to do was to redo the structure so that we can enhance that. Let that run its course for the next 24, 36 months, because there's going to be tweaks in that. And through that next 24 to 36 months, it's really going to identify what the need is of the community. Of course, everybody's got an opinion, but just like we have the survey that gives us quantitative information, we want to run this program for 2 to 3 years, and then after that, then assess what we need to deal with space issues. Dan, you're up.
Okay. First, I'd like to say I'm very proud of this this end result for what we've collectively achieved, and I wanted to thank members of the board as well for indulging me. I reached out to you as well as anybody else I could find, because in the beginning of this process I was in a different location on the learning curve as to what's involved with different committees, different clubs and organizations and civic organizations and businesses, and how they interrelated with one another in town. And the feedback from the field that I got is the result of what you see up here. And essentially we've used the word enhance in terms of the delivery of services. But one piece that also came to light was the mechanism as to how that information gets triggered from one group to the next. A lot of different committees have demonstrated that they're very good at what they do, But the issue ended up being one of compartmentalization, where there wasn't an answer for the community that they were serving as to what the next step was for them, or who they could then be referred to for services beyond what they were focused on. And a lot of what this does is allows a better apparatus for collaboration between the different services listed, but also it creates a conduit for internal growth as well for the people providing those services. And beyond that, like I said,
So Savory's a very modest guy, but I just want to point out before Savory talks on this, is that Savory was very instrumental in working with the independent group that did the townwide survey. And one of the things that Savory said is he really enjoyed that process of going out and meeting with people, but he wanted to make sure that that survey wasn't put on a shelf. So he says, how can I get involved? And Savory's now on the Council on Aging as an alternate member. And has been, very helpful in this whole process. And I just want to call you out, Savory, because, it's appreciated the effort you put into this.
Well, thank you. I wasn't really expecting to speak tonight, but yeah, no. I just want to say that the Council on Aging survey, we sent it to everybody 55 and over. We made sure that every person in town 55 and over got it. We used the town records to make sure that they had it. And their population of 11,509.
Or not.
There were 4,500 residents, or 35% of people in this town are 55 and over. And of those, we had over 1,200 responses for a response rate just north of 30%, which is a huge response rate for any kind of survey that you're doing. So people are interested in this. The good news is that everybody in town, over 90% of the town, think that they are either in excellent or good health. So and they want to be active moving forward. I think that one of the sadder parts of the survey that we found out, and hopefully this will go to the healthy aging component of this chart, is that 3% of the people who responded to the survey, which is approximately 36 individual people, have to make the decision between buying food and buying medicine. And that's a sad thing to think about. So hopefully, moving forward with this, with healthy aging, we get the awareness out of what's available to these people, and they won't have to make those choices because there'll be other options to them. So basically, that's it.
So beyond this structure, the group has spent an awful lot of time talking about programs and different things they want to roll out, and how the survey and how the newsletters are going to be done and how the calendar is going to be done. We're not going to get into that tonight because that's really an operational issue. But what we wanted to do is share the structure, share the thought behind it. This is a well thought out plan that's been in the works in a collaborative manner, for the last, almost 6 months. Any questions while we have the experts here?
Just a quick comment. I agree with the comment you folks made that, we have a lot of wonderful services at the library, at the Council on Aging, all over, but repeatedly I talk to people in town who don't know about them. So I know, Dan, when you and I talked, we talked about a number of different methods that we could try to get the word out about things, and I just hope going forward that we continue to try to come up with some new and innovative methods, whether it's Facebook or social media or a community calendar or something. We need to find a way to connect with the residents and let them know what we have to offer. Because we have a lot of great programs, and we need to make sure everyone's aware of it.
And Mark, that is the focus of this reorganization, because currently, right now, we don't have the resources to do that. Everybody in town hall works 3 different jobs, and they're all multitasking. So, that's really where, we needed to add this additional brand-new position that, part of their responsibility is going to be focused on the awareness and the outreach, because you hit the nail on the head. That's where we need to do it, because Facebook shouldn't be the source of information for the town, particularly if it's not coming from a reliable town source. But by putting this together, we can use Facebook and other means to help get that factual information out.
It doesn't matter how good or how varied our programs are if the residents don't know the programs are taking place. So yeah, we have to find more ways to let them know. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, to that end, when we had the senior tax relief program or committee running, and we ended up getting approval from town meeting and ultimately from the legislature for the home rule to provide relief to seniors that want to stay in their homes if they qualify on an income basis to get a reduction in their taxes. As we were in that, we discovered there are a lot of programs already available on the state level, federal level, and in the town, and within town itself, to help seniors that want to have relief that none of us in the committee, and it was a committee that qualified, I believe, for the most part, for the benefits of senior tax relief, none of us were aware that this was out there. Now, a lot of it's income-based. But, you know, when I hear something about people having to make choices between their prescriptions and their food, if there are some programs out there that can help relieve their, you know, if they're living in their own home and they want to stay in their own home, which was the purpose that, Bill Duggan really initially suggested this, then we should, that's another, as far as healthy aging, that's information that needs to be available and that we get to these people so that, every dollar they can save is meaningful to them.
Just to share a little story with you, about a year and a half ago, I got into a discussion with a person down at the senior center who felt that the town wasn't putting the resources into our council on aging like Plymouth. And so I said, all right, well, let me go back and do the research. Went back and did the research, and down to the thousandths of a percentile, Carver was putting in the same amount of our budget into COA as Plymouth was. But Plymouth had this big elaborate newsletter. Plymouth had staff of 6 or 8 or 10, whatever the things were, but they had the economies of scale to do that. And we don't have the economies of scale to grow to Plymouth, because that means we'd be laying off firefighters or policemen or teachers or whatever it is, because there's only so much money to come. But by putting this together and having all the different groups work together, that's where we come back to the enhancement is we think we can provide better services by having it under this broader umbrella with all of these social services and cultural things in one area. And that would allow us to, move forward with the outreach and put these different programs that are out there and help make people aware of that. And Dan's got even more ideas, particularly, again, from some of the veterans and housing and other stuff that's available. But we don't have the mechanism, we don't have the structure to get that information out. This helps us get there.
One important point I wanted to make, and it's reflected in the 55 and over surveys. There was a large portion of those surveyed that wanted volunteer opportunities. And as I was on the proverbial tour, as it were, having the meetings and meeting with folks and just engaging in the dialogue as to finding out what was on their wish list. As a committee or as an individual, as a resident of the town, that was also predominantly one of the things that came back, is that they would like to perhaps get more engaged in things going on in town, but they didn't know how, or because they found out about an event the day after it already happened, that there was a missed opportunity. So one of the things that, again, this is more in terms of programs down the line, and that is creating a volunteer apparatus for different events in town, one of groups of with special skills. But through this process, some of these people have already gotten excited enough to start formulating their own volunteer groups. One in particular was started by myself and the veteran service officer and some other veterans in town, where there's now a coffee hour that's a monthly coffee hour that's kicked off over the past 3 months, and is now formulated into a resource group for veteran services in town, for not just for veteran individuals, but for veteran families. And a speaker series is kicking off in January. And that's just by starting the conversation. And that's just one example.
Outreach and awareness.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun.
And Joanna promised me that she's going to start giving dancing lessons.
Oh, yeah.
Just so anybody knows, she
No,
can
I'm
do
taking
backflips.
ukulele lessons.
No, tell me about the
Yes,
backflip.
we're having ukulele lessons now at the Council on Aging.
I'm going
We have our
tomorrow
own band.
to meet the man. I'll have to bring my grass skirt.
So, no backflips in the grass skirt. Joanna can do a backflip.
You could be there.
I've seen her do it.
I know.
Any questions on what we're looking at for this restructuring? And again, we're not eliminating anything, we're just building it up and enhancing and providing better customer service, better support, better awareness, better outreach, as building a new foundation to take Carver into the next level.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add is, remember that we have Area 58 just up the street, and if you want to do videos to get information out, you can do videos that we can then have online. They can be available at YouTube, they can be on TV. So it's a resource, and, you know, we have the strength of the 3 towns supporting it. So just keep the idea that you have another media that you can utilize to try to get the information out.
No, certainly to that point, I'm an expert at knowing what I'm not an expert at. And we've already been generating a list of people who are experts in different services, and that's one way of getting it out, getting the word out about different services to the community. But we're also, I also don't want to shortchange the FaceTime, the value of FaceTime with the community. With these different groups, I think it's important that there is constant engagement with the community in person, in print, and then obviously through social media, through websites, and through cable. So we're looking at that sort of shotgun approach to make sure we cast as wide a net as possible. Yeah.
All right, last round. Alan, any questions?
No, but I
Comments,
would
statements?
like to point out that this presentation, the whole thing, was given to the Finance Committee last night, and they voted unanimously to support the structure as Michael was presenting tonight. So it was a unanimous vote.
Mark?
No, I'm all set.
Ron?
No?
Sarah? Bob?
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time and effort putting into this, and I don't really have a comment about this, but I support it. I do have other ones on the whole scheme of things.
Yep.
I'd like to discuss after.
We got one more to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meg?
Meg LeMay,
Assume
come
the
on
chair up
down.
there. All right.
You're the next contestant on Select Board.
So let me give a quick overview as to the finance department. First of all, things are going very well overall in the finance department, as you all know. As you have all seen with our audit reports, as you have seen a lot of the restructuring. Again, 6 years ago, we had individual departments and everybody's pointing the finger at the other person. We've broken that down, and we now have a very functional and highly respected finance department that is used as a model with some of DOR's analysis, what they do with other towns, and again, third-party statements are all there that we're doing extremely well. So with the finance department, we are looking to make some significant changes. Overall, we're looking to make 10 upgrades throughout the organizational chart. And those upgrades would generally be grade upgrades. The majority of them are coming out of the finance department. So I'm going to start with the finance department has our finance director, and we're not looking for any changes there. But the department is broken down into 2 sections. On one half, the left half over here, is you have our treasurer and collector division. On this side, you have our assessing and accounting division. I'm going to start with the treasurer and tax collector piece. This area is working better than it's ever worked before. We have a great treasurer collector who was our assistant treasurer collector and has taken the bull by the horn and worked with Meg and gone out and get additional training and is doing a superb job. Couldn't ask for anything more. And it's a great thing when you're a manager and you're looking at the overall, when you see people grow in their positions. Fabulous job that she's been doing. From there, we have our payroll and benefits coordinator. This position currently right now is a union position. We are going to be meeting with the union next week, and we've already given them notice of this, that our intent is to take that position out of the union and turn it into a non-union position. Payroll and benefits is a confidential position. However, when you're in a union, you're conflicted as to what is available, what's not. This change is supported by the employee that's in that position, and we do anticipate that we're going to get union support to take that out of the union and turn that into a non-union position. But again, that'll be a financial upgrade for that position. From there, we have our assistant treasurer collector, which is a grade 5. Also a great employee, and is just like a sponge, learning everything he can learn about treasurer collector and also accounting and assessing. Just really trying to be the sponge of the finance department to learn everything. And that's important between that and our treasurer collector, because as I've talked about, and as you've heard our auditor come in, and you've heard DOR come in, there's not a bullpen of finance people available in the municipal world. And the ones that are out there are the ones you don't want, because they're at a job for 6 months and they go to the next job for 6 months. So really in municipal finance, which is an art unto itself, is we really need to train from within. And that's what we're doing. Currently right now we have 2 finance assistants that are grade 3s. This is another upgrade we're looking to do, is we're looking to take those finance assistants and move them up to a treasurer collector clerk position. So those will be a new upgraded position. We'll be moving those people from a 3 to a 4 as part of this process. As Alan remembers, when we went through with the SEIU union, we did do a survey of what other comparable towns were paying their people at different levels. And we found out that our 3s and 4s were grossly underpaid compared to other towns, and we made some changes on that. But part of that study showed us that some of these positions needed to be upgraded, and that's what we're doing. Is we've got 2 great people that are working there, and we are intending to move them up from a grade 3 to a grade 4 in the treasurer collector side. Again, I can't say enough about this side, and these are just minor adjustments that we're looking to do to make it work even better. So again, that side's working well. Over on, now what you see here in our org chart is that under the finance director is, in essence, you have a non-union, you have a manager overseeing the treasurer collectors. But today you do not have a manager overseeing the assessing and accounting, which unfortunately, particularly in assessing, and we did have a discussion with several members of the Board of Assessors last night, and I'm going to sum up what they said, is that they're in agreement what we have today is not working. And that's been identified by our outside consultant, by our finance committee, by the data that's been coming in there. Even though we brought in multiple consultants to help train staff that's there, we're still not getting the accuracy and the full breadth of what they're supposed to do getting done. What the chairman of the assessing board stated is, he says, this is definitely an improvement over what we have right now. He's not sure if it goes far enough, that he thinks there should be more staff there, but this is a definite improvement over what we have by having a manager in charge of the department. Which in essence goes back to a similar what it was several years ago, where we had a director of assessing, and then underneath that we had a grade 4 and a grade 3 employee. Now we're going back and kind of changing that. So again, I want to focus on this new assistant finance director would be a manager overseeing both the accounting and the assessing division. When we look at a workload effort, it's not equal that they're going to be spending on each side. The accounting is pretty straightforward. It becomes rogue to a certain extent, but for doing through the procurement and addressing certain items that need to be done, is that it is straightforward. Every week's the same week. You're doing the same task that's there. Assessing is a little bit more complicated because at different times of the year, you're doing different things. So we're estimating that this position is probably going to spend 70-30, 75-25, or more on assessing and less on accounting, but that's where the need is. That's where the work is. That's where the complexity is that we need this individual to focus on. Now, with that, in order to create this position, because we still have to live within our financial means, is we currently have 2 grade 5 positions, one in assessing, one in accounting. We are eliminating those 2 positions. Those 2 positions are eliminated as part of this restructuring. And what we have done is we've in essence taken that salary line item for each one of those people and moved half of their salary line item up to fund the full-time manager and half of it down to hire a second person in both assessing and accounting. So net, when we look at this structure, is where the full-time equivalent is not really changing by what we're proposing with this reorganization. We're just refocusing it into what needs to be done in order for us to operate efficiently. So with that, under the assessing division, we will be having 2, and again, you're seeing these clerks. So these are all grade 4 upgrades. Currently in the assessing department, we have 2 financial assistants at a grade 3, and we have 1 grade 5. Again, we're eliminating the grade 5. We're moving one of the finance assistants' spots up to a grade 4, and we're creating another grade 4. So we'll have 3 part-time people working under 1 manager in the assessing department. When it comes to the accounting division, we currently have a grade 5 position that, again, is being split. Half of that value is going up and half's going down to create assistant accounting clerk. And this is stuff that's been identified through reviews and analysis that Meg's been working on for a while as to how to better organize that department. We currently have 1 grade 3 in this department, and that grade 3 would be moving up to a grade 4. And we'd be looking to hire a new grade 4 part-time position here and a new grade 4 position part-time here. So those would be 2 new hires, as well as this position would all be advertised and, looking to hire additional support staff coming into the department. So with that, Meg, I'm going to have you fill in the detail.
Okay. So just to go back in time to when the finance department started, at that particular point, the most acute need was for resources to be put towards the treasurer collector's office because we did have some struggles there. And see, in my time as finance director, I'm on my 3rd treasurer collector, and the last treasurer collector was superb. She was great, but she did get a job that was paying more money. And so when we first started the finance department, the most acute need was there. And then since that time, we've had turnover, and so a lot of resources and attention has had to go towards the treasurer collector's office. But now we do have a stellar staff over there, and it's running incredibly well. So we can move on past the treasurer collector's office. And the reason why you have to put so much attention there is because that's the office that deals with cash, borrowing, a lot of big ticket items, and it needs to be running well. So you can't move on to other things until that is set. And again, my background is I was the town accountant, so I had the accounting piece down. And again, to go back in time, we could, with the assessing office, you could have looked at bringing in someone from the outside who had experience, but as Michael has said, there's something called the silver tsunami where lots of municipal employees with experience have all retired. And so to get someone who is good, and it's a very difficult thing. And also in my past experience is, and this is 2 parts here, is that sometimes with the municipal employees who have had a ton of experience, they know the material, but they also have an attitude of this is how it's always been done, and they don't look at it to see if it's the most efficient or if it's the best way, or to challenge that thought process as to whether it should be done that way. And then the second part of that is we learned a very big lesson with our last treasurer collector, which is that she had no municipal experience. And by giving her the training, and she embraced the training, she was up and running in a very short period of time, and she did a phenomenal job. So we realized that it doesn't necessarily need to be someone with past municipal experience. And so with the assessing office, we did attempt the training aspect of it. That did not really go as well as we had wanted it to. And as Michael has also said, we've had consultants come in. We've also had the Department of Revenue make note of issues that need to be addressed. And just my own experience, this is an area that needs assistance. And Steve Pratt also has noted areas that are significant in that office that need to be addressed. That's not an area this is now the most acute area that needs to be addressed, is the assessing aspect of it. And what I need...
on that too, and just to change topic just slightly on the assessing office, is the assessing also is the backbone for our public safety. Is that anytime there's a subdivision, anytime a new house is added, anytime the maps are done with Form As or whatever, the assessing department is required to update the maps and put those into our E911 system. What we found out was that wasn't being done.
For 3 years.
We found that out through the state for a while, and we provided numerous training opportunities to get that done, and it still wasn't being done. So it's something that we've had to address on our own. But these are things that you have to have the right people in there that are willing to do what's necessary to complete the task and accept the training that's being done. And as we talked last night at the Finance Committee, and as the chairman of the Board of Assessors knows, Meg has put in an exorbitant amount of time and had all the consulting resources there to help rise the department. Because that's always our first effort. We want to try to do that. But after a couple years, and now that's becoming more acute, is that we now need to look at a different way of delivering services.
And I think a big part of that is, like I said, a lot of attention was going towards the treasurer collector's office. And I did not know, because the consultant didn't tell me until recently, I have a lot of problems with your data. Like, I'm very frustrated by your data. And in my conversation since then, he's saying the same thing. It hasn't changed, Meg. It's still going on. So as finance director, I have to look at this and say, this is not a situation that can continue. We have tried. We have given the resources, and we have tried. It's not changing. It could lead to something serious. We've already noticed issues that are too big to ignore. So assessing needs to be there. And as I was saying, it doesn't, for the new position, it doesn't need to be someone with a ton of municipal experience if we have the training that's available. What I need more than anything is I need someone who is intelligent, who wants to be a team player, who has the enthusiasm and really just wants to do the job the correct way. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what I need right now. And on the accounting side...
Before we get to the accounting,
yeah.
Just one more thing on the assessing is that, we've had some dedicated people that have been in there for years doing the stuff, and we appreciate the work that they've done. But what our consultant has been showing us, and what Steve Pratt identified, is there's tens of thousands of dollars, and that's a low number, that happened on a regular basis that wasn't being done for almost a decade, if not longer, of things that should have been done, and it's money the town's missed out on. And the $10,000 is a low number as to what's happened, but it was a systemic issue in how that department was run, even before we created the finance department to kind of oversee that. And as time progresses, things become more aware and you become more issues that pop up. And as Meg said, this is the acute item right now. This is the area where the focus has been on.
And the accounting has never been super acute, but the issue there is that as a finance director, what my role is to work with the 3 departments to get them to communicate, to take the problems that can't be solved at the lower levels and figure it out. But it's also involved with the revenue forecast, with the bigger picture items. And so being involved in maybe the more, I don't want to use the word mundane, but the more day-to-day activities is not something that I can get bogged down in. And so, we do have someone right now who's doing the accounts payable and payroll, and she's a part-time person. She's getting it done in her part-time hours. So the piece that's missing for me and has been missing for me for years are issues like cash receipts, cash recons, receivable recons. I need someone to take those issues because I'm doing or sending out the month-end reports. Those are things a finance director should not be doing. I shouldn't be running a report that's in the system. It's got the parameters set up. That shouldn't be the finance director doing that every month. And it's time-consuming, and it keeps me from doing bigger picture issues.
And just on that is when we made the change to create the finance department, is that, again, rewinding 6 years ago, it was Meg, and she had a full-time assistant accountant. That was it. And when we made the change is that the full-time assistant accountant was supposed to do what Meg just mentioned, plus we hired a part-time person for them to do a bunch of the payroll and the AP stuff.
Yeah.
And so you went from, one person to 1.5. And what we've now found out is that the half person that we have is doing all of the payroll and all of the AP, and that's why we're looking to come back and hire a second person to come back and do stuff that hasn't been done in 6 years. And Meg and I did have some discussion with Meg because she's been doing the work that it was supposed to be done at a lower level, but she was doing it, which then slowed down her from doing other things. And to the extent she's been covering for a long time, and when things really got to this acuteness and looking at things, she goes, I can't do that anymore. I need them to do their job, and it wasn't being done. And so this restructuring allows us to make sure we have one person doing the AP and the payroll, and the other person helping on doing all of your reconciliation.
Or even just the month-end reports, cash receipts, those things that it's not something that takes an advanced skill set to do, and it is a time-consuming task. So that's all I have.
And so again, this has been in the works for a while. It's been trying to assess what's going well and where we need improvement. And in essence, this is a reorganization, restructuring. Particularly focused on the accounting and assessing division to kind of mirror the side that's working well with the same type of structure. And, I think Meg's talked to DOR on this. We've talked to our auditor on this. And, we have full support from our third-party folks that this is the way to go. And sometimes it is tough to make these structural changes. But our objective, as in the financial policies, is we have to look to the long-term sustainability of the town. And if we have something that's been broken for 10-plus years and the town's lost a lot of money for it, we got to do something. It's hard to do something. We're taking the hard decision to make those changes because it's in the best interest of the town.
Because as the finance director, I have to tell you, it concerns me that if we were to continue with the status quo, that something significant would not happen, and I do take responsibility. I'm not even going to throw anyone under the bus for that. I would take responsibility, and that concerns me greatly. So a change is needed.
Questions?
Quick question. Meg, thank you. Where you feel there are challenges in the assessing and the accounting department, do you feel confident that these changes, that these are enough to address those challenges that are there?
The accounting side, yes, because, even right now, between the part-timer and myself, we're handling it. It's stressful, and it's a lot, and it's overwhelming. If we get a part-time person doing the other tasks, that should be okay. I feel comfortable with that. The assessing piece, of course, everything is... You make your best guess as to what it is that's going to work. And like I said, I think that if you, in the new assistant finance director position, if that person gets the training and has the proper attitude, I think that will go a tremendously long way. It's just that right now I still feel like we're struggling to break into that office. Because to me, as the finance director, what I want to do is I want to take the tasks of an office, break it down, figure out what we need to do to get there, How do we get there? What's the most efficient way to accomplish those tasks and to do it correctly? It's been a struggle to get there and to get into that place where I can make that assessment. So without being able to make that assessment, this is what I think will work. Is it 100% guaranteed that it's going to work? I can't say that right now. We may need to come back and tweak it at some point, but I feel pretty confident with it.
That was a similar discussion the Finance Committee had, is there anything else that you're going to need? And I think this demonstrates that when we see a problem, we try to fix it, we try to train up, we try to raise the whole department. But if we are unable to do that, then we have to do a restructure, we have to fix it. So, if we go through it and, another year with this thing and we need something else modified, of course we're going to do that. And, we've got the full support of the Finance Committee to do that, and also the chairman of the Assessing Board to do that. What you don't see on this chart, because this is just positions, is that there's a lot of money we're putting into here to provide consultant training and consulting assistance in here. So that's not shown on here because it's not a full-time equivalent, but we are spending a lot of money to do that, and we're just not getting the results that we need today, so we have to restructure.
Speaking of money, you want to go ahead and tell them what this restructuring will cost? Is it higher labor?
I think the last time I looked at it was about $7,000 additional.
I think that would be money very well spent.
Well, and I think I said this to the Finance Committee last night, is that if you have people who don't have the correct skill sets, who don't have the acumen to want to do things differently, or who just simply overlook certain things, as we've talked about, that there have been things that have been overlooked, it's going to cost far more than the $7,000, and as Michael said, $10,000 is a low ball of what we had discovered in the past.
Per month.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Ron, any questions? Sarah? Bob?
I want to thank you very much. You've done an excellent job since you've taken on the role here, and I have the utmost respect for you and what you're doing up there.
Thank you.
And I support you 110% up there. It's very important, your role up there, and having the right people up there is very important. All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob, did you have questions on other aspects that you would want to get more information on?
Not with that department.
No, but
Yeah.
In other words, I'm thinking that we'll put a vote off on this until the next meeting so you can look into more detail.
I think it's kind of important that I just bring this one thing up, if I
Okay.
could. This is about the town clerk's office. When I took over, being voted in here, I brought up that with a new town clerk, we need to put money and efforts into that department. With the assistant town clerk leaving, it's only 2 people now in there. Then a part-timer had left there. So we have the town clerk and the records clerk, part-time employee. That's 2 people for that one department. When the finance department came up, they had a lot of problems when it got changed from elected to appointed. A lot of money was put into that, and we're actually seeing some of the things coming in now where a lot of money, when you put the money into it, you give them the consultant, you give them the help, all right, it can do a lot of good things. We haven't done that with the town clerk's office, and I'm really frustrated with that because that needs to be done. We need more people in that office, all right, to, number one, allow her the training, the staff the training, but also she needs staff in there too, all right? And I think that 8 months is too long, all right, for that department not to be up and running and having the staff that's needed to do the work in that department. I'm really frustrated with this. I don't know about any other selectmen here, but there's something wrong, and I want to know why they don't have the staff in there yet, 8 months from the election. It's dumbfounded. And then the assistant town clerk left a couple of months ago, and we don't have someone in there. I mean, I haven't seen any positions posted, help wanted, or anything. Why? This is really frustrating me, because that's an important position as a town clerk, all right? And I hate to turn around and say, oh, a couple town meetings down the road, well, you know what, it's not working out with the town clerks, we need to go to an appointed town clerk. All right, well, look at all the issues that are coming up here, okay? This is wrong. What's being done there is wrong. We need to have people in there working for our residents, all right? And closing down to get training is great, but if you don't have somebody in there training them, then there's a problem. So this needs to be done. Something needs to be done. And if the assistant town clerk, if she ever left, what's left? If they're too stressed and overworked because of all the stuff that isn't getting done, and there's statutory requirements that they have to get things done at a certain time, and they don't have the time. And why do we have money for this, but we don't have the money for that? It's frustrating.
So Bob, I'm glad you're frustrated, and I'd like to address your questions. But I'm going to break your comments down into two things, because one, I agree with you. The second, you're dead wrong, with all due respect. The first is that, yes, when we have a new town clerk that didn't have experience, that individual needs to have proper training and the support staff around them to do the work that needs to be done. And I have daily conversations with the town clerk. The assistant town administrator, who's also the HR coordinator, has daily conversations with the town clerk. The town clerk is not complaining. The town clerk does not frustrated, as you said the department is or you are. The person doing the work does not have an issue. Now, what have we done? One, we have provided ample and enough money to support that office with consultants coming in, to the point that the town clerk can't find enough consultants out there to help her with the training, so she's gone out and getting peer mentoring with that. She's also in a much better place because both positions have been resigned, and it allows her to go forward and hire new people to come in that are going to want to work collaboratively with the elected clerk to do the job that she was hired to do. And she is excited for hiring new people and being able to change the culture that's in there. Now with that, that's also required us to relook at the job descriptions. The job descriptions have been relooked at. They've been sent to the union to take a look at. Those job descriptions, once the union approves them, are what's going to be hired for the two new clerks coming in there, one full-time and one part-time. Kara is doing her job, and that should be respected by everybody because she's working hard. She's working to understand what she doesn't know. She's going out of her way to do that. And let me tell you, we've given her every resource she needs to get the job done. And she's not once said that we're not giving her what she needs to be done. Now, we can have Facebook, we can have others, we can have employees that left that want to bitch and moan. But the fact of the matter is the only voice that matters, the only one responsible for that is not you, it's not me, it's not anyone else sitting up on this board. It's the town clerk who was hired to represent the town. Her voice is the only one that matters. And you don't see her up here complaining. You don't see her up here frustrating. She's doing the work that she needs to do. And she's very supportive and trying to get the job done, and we've given her the resources to be done. So I would just ask, before we start complaining about others, that we know what's actually going on and actually listen to the person whose only voice matters, and that's the town clerk. She's not missing any deadlines. She's not missing any data. The Secretary of State's working with her office. They're coming down providing training. She's doing what she needs to do. In a capital budget, we're hiring new voting machines for her. We're doing everything that she needs. When she has a request, we make sure she gets it. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because a former employee complains about it doesn't mean it's true. Listen to the town clerk, and with all due respect, I think she's the one that we need to pay attention to.
Mr. Chairman, through you, question. Do we have a timeline when the union's going to approve these?
I have meetings with them next week.
Okay, and then if they approve it, what, a month or two to get those positions filled?
We have people that are interested in the positions right now.
Good, because that way they'll be able to get the new people on board, train them up, and be all ready for the upcoming election season, which we all know is very busy for the town clerk's office.
And what's very interesting with the town clerks group is that several former town clerks and existing town clerks that have fully functional offices have volunteered to come down and do that on a regular basis to help mentor Kara. She's developed great relationships with other town clerks, and they're giving her the support she needs. And, you know, as Meg said before, if you got somebody that cares about the job and is putting the effort into it, then you let them do their job. And we're giving her the resources that she needs. And she's putting the time and effort to make sure it happens because she's proud of what she's doing and she wants to do it the right way. And she's the one, Bob, making the decisions.
So why aren't these other two positions under the town clerk here? You said there's two positions here.
If you look
So-
right on the top of the screen, we got town clerk.
And we
And then we have assistant town clerk and we have the town clerk records administrator. Yes.
Right, and that one's already there.
No, that person resigned.
So there's two people in that office right now, correct?
There's 2.5 people that are 2.5 full-time equivalents that's budgeted for that office. Kara is one of them. Then after that, she's got a full-time assistant town clerk, and she's got a part-time town clerk's record administrator. The assistant town clerk resigned to go take another job. She actually
Correct.
retired and getting her pension plus working up to 19 hours in another town. The town clerk records administrator recently just resigned, and she'll be leaving later on this month. Those are the
I didn't know
positions that are there.
So that's another, wow. Okay.
But again, Bob, it's the town clerk's responsibility.
I would not be here saying this if I didn't talk to the town clerk. That's what I'm saying with it.
Well, that's not what, never mind.
So again, giving the board the opportunity between now and our next meeting to follow up on additional questions and so forth, we'll put it on the next agenda, Shelby, to consider a vote on the reorganization. All right, next item is an update on Mass Works grant for urban renewal plan and Route 44 development.
Yes. Thanks, Meg.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you, Meg. Carol?
Carol, thank you.
So, as I've sent out notice, on Thursday at 4 o'clock, the town of Carver is going to be, have the governor of Massachusetts come in to make an award to the town. This is the culmination of over 2 decades of work that started, back when Jack Hunter was here, and the town's been steadfast in its effort to redevelop the Route 44 land. And with that, that started back with a master plan in 2001 that identified that as the development area, followed by creating a district improvement financing district plan to help pay for a new water treatment facility and put in new tax revenue that's generating that to fund that. It had the rezoning of the site with by right uses to encourage economic development. The town also adopted a priority development site under 43D. The town adopted an urban renewal plan. The redevelopment authority's been working aggressively with that urban renewal plan. They negotiated with a developer, Route 44 Development, to enter into a development agreement. That developer went forward and has acquired, I think it's 8 out of the 9 properties that were there. That developer put up probably close to $300,000-$400,000 to move forward with the MEPA and the transportation analysis. And with all of that, a few months ago, with the help of Jim Walsh and myself and others on our team, we applied for a MassWorks grant. That MassWorks grant was to put in the realignment of Metelo Street to connect to Route 58 and to also put a new traffic signal. This will be just north of the convenience store that you have there, and it will be dead-ending Montello Street as was shown in the urban renewal plans. With that, the governor is coming down to issue a multi-million-dollar grant, much larger than any other community in Massachusetts is receiving. We put together a very good application process. We had meetings with the Secretary of Economic Development that came down to Carver. We met with him. Representative Gifford was very helpful, and Mark Townsend and I had a meeting with the Secretary when he came down. I've had follow-up meetings with him and his staff. And again, we are going to be awarded that grant. We've signed the grant agreement. And now for the official ceremony, that's going to be again this Thursday at 4 o'clock here in this chamber. Again, this really will allow the town, with the help of the redevelopment authority and the developer, to kickstart this redevelopment. And I think what's important to recognize too is, I gave the litany of all the things that have been done to create this site. There's a tool chest for doing economic development, and in that tool chest you have several different things. Everything I've listed is the extent of the tool chest. So the town has used every one of those items to advance this property so that it will now be available for any end user to come in with these transportation improvements that will help advance Carver's financial sustainability objectives. So again, it's, we'll hear from the governor, and we'll have some more comments to make on that on Thursday, but it's really been a 20-year effort by the town to help move this forward.
Are we letting the governor go ahead and say the amount?
Yeah, we're going to let the governor tell us. It's several $million.
Yeah.
We'll just let him tell
A
us.
bunch.
Yeah. He'll have the big check. You can read the check. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Any questions on that? Again, thank everybody for the help on that. It was a full team effort to make that happen.
Update on tree funds donations for Town Hall complex?
Yep, as part of our solar projects, where there have been some removal of dead trees and other items, we have had some of our solar companies come in and provide donations to set up this tree fund. As you may recall, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, we had to go through and cut down a bunch of pines that were, at the end of their safe life. So with these funds that we've now received, totaling almost $30,000, we will be utilizing that to further enhance the town hall complex through the operation and maintenance department when appropriate, and also tied into the new police station as well. So we have received funds from that that just started coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're
Amended
2
minutes.
hours and 10 minutes late.
Amended minutes of November 5th, 2019. What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion we approve them.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. We have a request, the usual request for a one-day special license for the extension of 1 hour for Tiki Kai on New Year's Eve.
I move we approve pending police chief approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, December 17th, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone then. Thank you for joining us, and have a great week.